Good afternoon. My name is Crystal Vanucci, and I'm the chairman of the Stafford County Board of Supervisors. Welcome to this afternoon's Board of Supervisor meeting, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Miss Allen. Miss Baumke.
Here.
Mr. Cohen.
Here.
Mr. Dudenhofer.
Here.
Miss Lamb.
Here.
Mr. Snellings.
Here.
Ms. Vanucci.
Here.
Madam Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. First, just a couple of remarks. I would like to wish our Hispanic residents a happy Hispanic Heritage Month. Hispanic Heritage Month runs from September 15th through October 15th every year. We celebrate by presenting a proclamation to the Hispanic community. This year, we partnered with the schools to administrate an art contest in our elementary schools. The theme is, What My Hispanic Heritage Means to Me. There will be a finalist from each of our districts, and the winner will accept a proclamation on behalf of the community at our next board meeting, October 5th. Thank you to all of our residents of Hispanic descent for all you do to make our community better and for the rich culture that you add to Stafford County. Another update regarding National Night Out. I hope that you'll be able to join us for Stafford's National Night Out and the Lowe's parking lot at Stafford Marketplace. The event is from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. on October 5th, 2021. Please keep in mind your best measures to keep yourself safe in regards to COVID-19 at the event. Some of you may be attending celebrations in your neighborhood or just sitting on your own front porch with the lights on. And the goal of National Night Out is to promote the community-police relations. I am incredibly proud of Stafford County's Sheriff's Office and our residents, and I hope you will join us in strengthening those bonds. And I know there's a lot of you guys here today, so I'm just going to kind of roll through how this is going to work. We don't have any public presentations today, and we'll get to adopting our agenda here in a moment, and then we'll move on to public presentations. There's a lot of people here today. I'm going to ask anybody who's standing in the back walls, you have to please take a seat, because it is a fire hazard to allow people to be standing up near the walls. So make sure that everybody sits down and remains quiet, and we'll be able to process the public comments as we move forward. Are there any deletions or additions to the agenda, Mr. Presley?
No, Madam Chair, there are not any deletions or additions or deletions, but I will note that item number 14, which is the amendments to the board's bylaws, has been requested by that committee to be pushed off to the next meeting when we have all members present. So rather than making it a date certain, once we are for sure that we have all members present, we'll make sure that's added to the next agenda.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. May I have a motion and a second to approve the regular agenda?
So move. Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, please cast your votes. Mark? That's okay. Tally the votes, please. That motion carries 6-0. So now that we've adopted the agenda, we'll move on to presentations by the public. So this is where those of you guys who came to speak today can come up and address the board on any topic that you so choose. I'm assuming many of you will be here today to talk about the critical race theory and the 1619 project on the agenda. That is your time to be able to do that. You'll have 3 minutes when you come up to the podium. When the green light comes on, please state your name, your address, and if you know it, the district that you reside in. When the yellow light comes on, you'll have 1 minute left. When the red light comes on, please conclude your comments. In order to allow time for everyone to speak who's here today, I will be cutting you off when that red light comes on. When you do address the board, you have to address the board as a whole, not individual board members, no pointing. We really ask that you keep your comments professional and taking in consideration the entire public that's in attendance, no matter what side of the aisle that you do sit on these topics. So at this point, I have about 30 pre-filed speaker cards, so I'll be calling you guys up. I'm going to call you up 3 at a time. The speaker would come up to the podium, and then the other 2 just kind of stand in the back on deck there, and then you can move forward. It'll help us process the speakers a little more quickly. My first speaker, I have Paul Milday. The second speaker, Brian Pasolano. And the third speaker is Stephen Studebaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am Paul Milday. I live at 10 Potomac View Lane, Stafford, Virginia. And I want to thank Mr. Snellings for proposing the resolution that would use the few tools you have available to you to try to keep the school board from imposing critical race theory or teaching critical race theory and related topics to our kids. I think it's the wrong place for that discussion at any grade. And I know you guys really don't have control over the school board, but to the extent you do, I think it's your responsibility to use that. I'm also a candidate for Quiet District Supervisor. It's a seat I held for 3 terms, 12 years. My local GOP, I'm a Republican, sponsored a pledge that it was suggested I could sign that said if I were to be elected, I would oppose critical race theory and support a resolution such as yours. And I have no problem with that. I signed that immediately. I believe I was the first person to do so. I have an opponent in this race, and she and I don't agree on everything, apartments or changing the names of roads, but maybe she and I can agree on this. And she's been asked, and I'm asking her again, to consider looking at this pledge and signing that pledge or something similar. CRT, it's discriminatory in and of itself. It seeks to find the differences between us and focuses on the ills of our past generations instead of focusing on the things that really unite us and that we have in common. I just think it's a very toxic topic and a toxic discussion to introduce to our children. So thank you for giving me this opportunity and for the tough job that you do.
Thank you very much. Brian Pesolano. Okay, not seeing him move forward. Stephen Studebaker, come on down.
Got to get my reading glasses here. Good afternoon. My name is Steve and Mark. I lived in the Garrisonville district. Stafford needs to get its educators refocused on the basics: reading, writing, math, and science. We've raised 4 kids in Stafford and have been repeatedly dismayed by the poor quality of the education. The third son went to North Stafford and had a dismal experience. He was not equipped to go to college at all. It was so bad that we redirected our youngest college money to put her in a private high school. She excelled in that focused learning environment, was encouraged to think, and learned to respect both her fellow students and teachers. However, not everyone can afford to send their kids to private school, nor should they have to send their kids elsewhere for a good education. A couple of things are needed. One, we need all of our kids to have an equitable chance to succeed in life. We do that through education that produces opportunity for kids, not programs that define privilege and abuse and encourage divisiveness like CRT. It is a distraction that neither students nor the teachers need. Another distraction from core education is gender fluidity. Boys are boys, girls are girls, and they should not be allowed to use each other's bathrooms or locker rooms. Boys' sports and girls' sports need to remain for the corresponding genders only. Class sizes in Stafford County schools are also much too large. Class size reduction is crucial for achievement. It's time to reprioritize the school budgets to hire more teachers for smaller class sizes. Lastly, if you want the kids to succeed in life, give them solid skills. One of the most successful programs in the U.S. is the AVID College and Career Readiness Program. I commend it to you as an educational model that yields equitable results for all racial and economic strata. The next generation of Stafford leaders, scientists, computer programmers, and teachers are not getting the education they need. We should be raising the education standards, not lowering them. Again, our teachers and school administrators need to stay focused on the basics. Anything else is a major distraction and is not a part of what public schools are called upon to do. Social engineering and indoctrination into divisive racial theories is not the province of public schools in a free democratic society. Anyone in the system who cannot teach our children without these radical theories should be dismissed. I applaud the efforts of the board to refocus the county schools back to the basics of learning. We support you and we vote. As an aside, I've heard some of you have been receiving hate emails threatening you because of this proposal. While we are part of a democracy that encourages free speech, Hate mail is wrong. We support the board and encourage you to continue on in this fight for the hearts and minds of our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, the next three speakers I have are James Minor, Richard Coleman, and Eric Kennedy.
My name is James Minor. I live on Barclay Lane in Stafford. I serve as first vice president of the NAACP here in Stafford County. Our president, Ms. Yolanda Roussel, could not be here because she works in education outside of the county, and the commute was not going to do her any good trying to get down here at this time of day. I encourage you to vote no on this resolution. I did not know that the Board of Supervisors was becoming the Board of Education. I think that that is beyond the scope of your purview, as does our organization. The 1619 Project, critical race theory, the use of preferred pronouns, all of these things have been thrown under the umbrella of critical race theory because that gets people energized, okay? Some people would gladly throw whatever they don't like under that umbrella because others will jump on it and say, oh no, we can't have that. A short story. A little girl in Westminster, California, in 1945, Sylvia Mendez, yearned to attend the beautiful school that her school bus dropped her off at every morning. She couldn't go to that school because she was Mexican American, and that school was dedicated for all white kids. Each day she talked to her parents and asked them about trying to go to that school. Couldn't do it until they joined with some other folks and got a lawyer and went to court. That became Mendez versus California, a precursor to the Supreme Court decision in 1954, Brown versus Board of Education. I did not know about this, the connection between the Hispanic community and the NAACP. Very few people do. It's not studied in high school, it's not studied in college. Very few legal schools cover it. But that connection was profound to me, and I would not have had an opportunity to learn about it. Thank you.
Richard Coleman, Eric Kennedy, and then Lisa Kennedy.
Richard Coleman, I live in the Queer District,
Can you please state your address?
42 Century Court.
Thank you.
When the resolution states 1619 project and CTR-related topic, I first wondered if any attempt was made to evaluate the relationship. I think when a cursory evaluation would reflect that the 1619 project questions the significance of historical events dating from 1619, while critical race theory is an effort to explain the impact of race and laws on policies implemented in modern America. I'd be interested in understanding why the topics were grouped together, and the fact that the board chose to include chosen pronouns indicates that the board just chose to suppress all topics with one vote and not bother to justify why they chose those topics. But I will try and limit my address to critical race theory. I saw a photo from a protest regarding critical race theory, and there was an elementary school child holding a sign that read, "I am not an oppressor." I can understand a parent being concerned about how the world views their child. If that is a concern, I feel that addressing what critical race theory is can be a valid effort. Critical race theory is an effort to highlight the implementation and damage that some laws and policies have inflicted. Teaching critical race theory at the elementary or high school level is not a concept that exists. However, trying to instill a fear of critical race theory in order to suppress some aspects of history are what we face today. The resolution appears to be an effort to suppress the findings reached by critical race theory, even when those findings are validated by other sources. Why some would choose to ignore history, I do not know. But I feel that the short-term release of ignoring history is not worth the long-term cost of ignoring the lessons of history. For parents that are concerned about their children being called an oppressor, I would recommend ensuring that your child learn what oppression looks like and understand what oppressive acts are. By ignoring oppression, we teach the children to ignore oppression. By failing to tell them what oppression is, we fail to give them the tools to reject oppression. I feel that as the board, it is your obligation to express and show your opinions to the public. But it is not I don't anticipate or don't feel it's appropriate to use your position to suppress ideals because you personally disagree with them. The board does not legislate when the school teaches the laws of cosign. It should not legislate when the school teaches the laws of public policy. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up, Eric Kennedy, and then Lisa Kennedy.
Hi, my name is Eric Kennedy. My address is 72 Walnut Farms Parkway, Fredericksburg, Virginia. I'm a Stafford County resident. I can't believe we're having this conversation in 2021. The job of schools is to teach my kids to read, write, be good at science, be good at those core classes that they need to be good citizens of this country. Last night I had a lot of trouble falling asleep, and as I was thinking about the CRT subject, I was trying to think of a time in human history where a country taught critical race theory. And the only country I can think of was from 1933 to 1945 was Nazi Germany. Adolf Hitler had his teachers teach in German public schools that Jews, Slavs, Poles, Russians, anyone that was non-Aryan or Germanic was evil because of who they were, not the content of their character, but based on their race. They collectivized their guilt. They said they were responsible for all the evils that befell Germany. This is the same kind of evil. Now, all of you have run for public office for whatever motivation that you had, but I can't think of a more important vote that you guys will have in your lifetime than this. This is the level of evil we're talking about. My children have to think that they're guilty of some crime that they haven't committed because of the color of their skin. I mean, I can't believe we're having this conversation. So please stop this. You have the power to stop this. This is evil. This is not history. It is not the job of public school teachers to teach politics in school. Keep it to science, keep it to math, keep it to English, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lisa Kennedy, and then Amanda, and I'm having a hard time reading your last name, but you're here to talk about the Belmont Ferry Trail, and you live on Shaw Court. Go ahead.
Hi. Yes, my name is Lisa Kennedy. I live at 72 Walnut Farms Parkway in Fredericksburg. I will be very, very brief. I don't need 3 minutes. I also cannot believe I'm even having to stand here and say this. It never would have occurred to me that I would have to get up in front of a room of people and explain why teaching racism in school is a bad idea. I don't understand it. This just doesn't make any sense to me. It's not about ignoring history. It's about... School should be about reading, writing, and arithmetic, and yes, history, of course. I will leave you with this. I have a nephew, a sweet, kind, funny, innocent nephew who is in elementary school. My brother is white, and his wife is black. Where does he fit into this discussion? And it makes me sick. What are his parents supposed to say to him about critical race theory? That part of him is bad and part of him... I don't understand any of this. Again, I don't need 3 minutes of your time. I just needed to know that I could stand up and say that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Amanda, and then Clay Oliver, and then Leah Watson.
Yes, I'm Amanda Moon. I reside at 207 Shaw Court. I'm currently the president of the Chatham Landing HOA. And based on my limited experience, I do not envy you guys your job. But I want to thank you for the opportunity to once again speak. You have heard many of us speak on the Belmont Ferry Trail subject many times since we have been fighting this since 2003. In that time, we've had many board members and many presidents, but we still oppose this for all the same reasons, many of which you have heard or will hear again tonight. So I'm sure to your relief, I'm not going to repeat everything that's already been said. We have spoken of the tremendous cost above the $130,000 that VDOT has for this less than 7/10 of a mile. But here are a few things that you, the board members, know, but others in the county may not know. This plan, as it stands, represents only 30% of the needed design to complete just this part of the trail. The detailed designs and the private property right-of-way acquisitions have yet to begin. 70% of this trail has not yet been designed. In addition to the fact that no offers have been made to property owners, and it is apparent that right-of-way will not be given willingly. This could start a long and protracted effort to acquire the property through eminent domain, but we'll fight that as well. Many of you may not have been driven by the area, so I have included some visual aids. In the pink area on your first photo is the private property of Chatham Landing. This is where VDOT wants to take out that huge planter area and replace it with the street, putting the trail where the current street is now. This is small. The next one is a small but less than 3 feet of walking area that our children will have, since this plan will take away the bus turnaround. They would then have to wait on Niamey Road where there is no standing area. The rest of the photos are what you will see along the trail. Number 4 is the sewage pumping station. Number 5, the 117-year-old bridge that at some point will need to be replaced. The electrical substation, the overflow storage units, the storage units, and the area where they want to turn the bridge into a one-way on each side, which means the school buses, the ambulances, and the nursing home property will be vying for a right-of-way, in addition to the 100 and some people that are going to be moving in when Mr. Janney opens his thing. Number 9 is where the trail would end on Jet Drive and Kings Highway, because Ferry Farm Foundation does not want it either. Number 10 is the alternate route that follows nearly the same route and is less than 30 yards from Dairy Lane, easily accessible from our community, but does not violate our private community location. Please abandon this route and move on to the better location. And since I understand that sidewalks in Aquia are the next project, I'm sure the citizens in Aquia would appreciate the sidewalks far more than this trail. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Clay Oliver, and then Leah Watson, and then Sharon LeCain is next.
My name is Clay Oliver, 74 Ironwood Road. It's a hard act to follow, but I'll give it a shot. I'm here to ask for your yes vote on the Belmont Ferry Farm Trail. Stafford County's 2019 Bicycle and Pedestrian Facilities Plan was acknowledged by all but one of the current supervisors. The plan identifies the health, safety, economic, traffic, environmental, and recreational benefits of bike and pedestrian facilities. It states that trails are the second highest demand resource in the George Washington Regional Planning District. It states that people want to use facilities that provide convenient access to nearby destinations with adequate protection from vehicles. It identifies the Ferry Farm area is underserved with respect to pedestrian infrastructure, and it shows that the Belmont Ferry Farm Trail extension to Ferry Farm is part of a bigger trail plan. Stafford could be on its way to becoming Trail Town. Imagine the economic boost where visitors can walk or bike the trail to see 3 great historic sites, Belmont, Chatham, and George Washington's Ferry Farm. Not too many communities can provide that. Many events could be coordinated between the historic properties simultaneously, festivals, food trucks, and scavenger hunts like the city does. These activities provide an economic boom to the county. Trails influence business locations, decisions, and have shown to pull area out of economic decline. A trail at Ferry Farm can be a draw to businesses to give a boost to the old bottom dollar shopping center that has been in economic decline for years. Stafford County can benefit economically with visitors going to restaurants, shops, and the Ferry Farm Visitor Center if the trail ends at Ferry Farm. George Washington's Ferry Farm website directs visitors to the city for restaurants unless they want fast food. I think Stafford can do a better job than that for its visitors. Supervisors should consider the positive influence trails have, not on one district in a large county, but on what trails do for an entire county and state. The plan shows potential trails throughout the county. There is data the board and/or VDOT can present to affected residents to let them know that the trails have benefits, that there is data that refutes fears of perceived problems, and that there are solutions to deter trespassers, block views, and beautify views. I'm sure Stafford County knows the positive effects of its latest trails. Residents do not want to wait a few years in hopes of a developer to provide a path. We know that the economy can turn on a dime, and we know developers' business plans change. Let the trail be built now. Let's take advantage of VDOT's help in paying for the trail. We want to see the supervisors invest in the health and welfare of its residents, execute its plans, and show businesses that Stafford County invests in this community. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Leah Watson, Sharon LeCain, and then Michelle Ray.
My name is Leah Watson. I live at 30 Naomi Road in Fredericksburg. I'm in the Washington District. No other citizen of this county is going to be impacted more than my husband and myself by this trail. As you can see from the diagram, its entire length almost goes through our property that we own both sides of. And the county has yet to address the impact that this trail on that location will have on our ability to access our property on the far side. It's over 16 acres, and we have no other way. You're essentially landlocking us from our property. No way to get on it, no way to clean it, unless we drive down the bike trail where pedestrians and bicyclists are supposed to be going. It also goes between 20 and 30 feet from my bedroom window. There's no other part of that trail that goes by a person's home that close. If you look at the diagram that was provided with your cost estimate for future trails, page 44, the Fredericksburg Bike and Pedestrian Infrastructure, you'll see a lot of roads in the city of Fredericksburg that are shared use roads, where vehicles and people and bikes share the space. That's an option that really hasn't been discussed. It would cost almost nothing. It would involve some paint. That road Naomi does not get that much traffic. So that's an option. Also at your meeting on the 7th, you had citizens from the Leland Station talk about the path that was being proposed by VDOT being too close to their properties. And you all agreed, and VDOT agreed, to listen to their concerns and redesignate the path. I don't understand why that's not being considered in the same way for this project. As was previously brought up, the cost estimates that you have are not complete. The cost of acquiring private property from all of the people that will be impacted is going to be significant, and you're going to have a fight because you've heard them, we don't want it. And it's not a matter of not in my backyard. We agree that the trail is important. I'm all for bike trails, just not the way you're proposing it. It's going to flood out. It's going to need constant maintenance. I deal with vagrants and trespassing on my land, so don't anybody tell me that that's not a problem. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Sharon LeCain, Michelle Ray, and then Pat Brown.
Good afternoon, Board. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to come before you and speak today. I am here to address your proposal of R20.
Can you just state your name and address?
I'm sorry. Sharon Lacane, 55 Tantera Drive, and I am in the Griffiths-Whitewater District. I am here to talk about R21-357. I did submit an email to the board yesterday, and I just want to expand a little bit on that today, as I've had a little bit more time since then to watch some videos of some discussions and read some more material. I did send an email appreciating your effort on this proposal, but it appears after some listening, and not to any of you all, but to some of our school board members, that I'm concerned about the fact that we don't address what CRT is. There's no definition in the proposal, so I'd like to maybe suggest that that be expanded upon, what is CRT and what does that mean? Because it seems everybody has a different definition, and why some people may be in favor and why some people may be against it. It seems to me that by just saying we don't teach CRT in Stafford County, which is what we're being told, that is an easy out, because the name CRT is reserved for college curriculum, as we're told on a regular basis. My concern is that I would like to see an adjustment to the proposal, again, adding that definition and maybe expanding upon the fact that we're not just going to teach CRT, but we're not going to teach CRT-influenced curriculum. So I think there needs to be a deeper dive into what that looks like. It is easy for bits and pieces of the divisive and dangerous curriculum to worm its way into the teachings in our school, which is what I fear will happen. We, the parents, will be on watch. We will hold our teachers, our administrators, and the school board members accountable. It should not be too much to ask, as others have said today already, that our children's education is fact-based and not filled with political and social agenda. Fact-based, skill-based education is what will lead our students to become future leaders of tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Michelle Ray, Pat Brown, and then Nancy DiGilio. I'm sorry if I just butchered that last name.
Hi, Michelle Ray, 48 Wakefield Avenue, and I live in Ferry Farm. And you guys have broad hats to wear with the topics coming up before you today, so I'm here to talk about the trail. And opportunities are like sunrises. If you wait too long, you miss them. And for too long, Stafford County has missed where the city of Fredericksburg has profited. The city built pickleball courts years ago, which draw many players daily from multiple counties, and those players stay to eat, go to the farmer's market, and shop, spending their dollars in the city. Fredericksburg built the Heritage Trail along the canal and the river, and this too draws many people daily for fun, fitness, and family time. They too stay and spend their dollars in the city. While Fredericksburg prospers just across the river by the Chatham Bridge in Stafford, we have had an empty, forlorn mini mall for years. Finally, that's changing, and the Ferry Belmont Trail is the perfect addition to this revitalization. We need the trail to extend to Ferry Farm and not let the trail end at the Chatham Bridge, which would again send all the bikers and the walkers back into the city to spend their dollars in town. As a homeowner, I would like to see lower property taxes with the prosperity of our local restaurants and our businesses. We have an opportunity now to make this part of our county a walkable zone. Now is the time for us to go forward with this and accept the VDOT money. We need to take this opportunity and make this walkable community a reality. I and my family are the bikers and the walkers that use these trails multiple times every week. I live in Ferry Farm, and when it's just adults, we ride our bikes on Route 3 and currently even on the bypass, which is harrowing and hazardous, let me tell you. And a bike lane like what we currently have on Cool Spring Road is not adequate, and we actually don't even use it. It's loud and scary and not family-friendly at all. This type of lane is not a draw, and it does not add to our community's walkability. And I've really been looking forward to using the Ferry Farm Belmont Trail straight from our home. It's fun coming up with ideas that are rideable, and we include going to parks and playgrounds, viewing the river, going for ice cream or lunch. And currently, we cannot ride with our granddaughter even to the local Dairy Queen because we can't get across Ferry Farm Road. So instead, we pack our bikes into our cars, drive across to the city, and we play at Kenmore, ride on the trail, and have lunch or ice cream in town. We can't even ride with her to Dairy Queen, like I said. So I don't want our county to be short-sighted and miss the opportunity to bring the trail all the way to Ferry Farm. With the Chatham Bridge project almost complete, the opportunity for this sunrise is now. We won't have the chance for that VDOT money again. Thank you.
Thank you. Pat Brown, Nancy DiGilio, and then Catherine Carver.
Good afternoon. I'm Pat Brown, 119 Leisure Street in the Rock Hill District in Stafford. I oppose teaching critical race theory in our schools. Critical race theory is a subset of something called critical theory, created by Antonio Gramsci, who was a communist who fled to the United States to escape Nazi Germany. The theory is simply this: criticize, criticize, criticize. Everything and anything about a culture and the nation in order to sow discord and hatred in a population, which creates the conditions for communism to be brought in. Critical race theory uses race to divide us instead of class. Basing decisions on someone's race is just a new version of eugenics, which was a progressive idea in the early 20th century. So it doesn't surprise me that today's progressives would reintroduce that. My generation has spent most of our lives trying to end this kind of discrimination. All human beings are equal because we are human. The sad reality of this theory is that it creates a culture of revenge for sins of the past. What model curriculums describe are not what plays out in the classroom. There are plenty of videos on YouTube showing teachers humiliating some students because of their race and making them fearful to speak. No one wants their children to be subjected to this kind of abusive treatment. I also do not want to see already overburdened teachers being turned into a police force of new cultural norms that we didn't vote for. They are here to teach their subject and should be free to do that. So I support the board's resolution to not allow or try and not endorse what's being taught in our classrooms. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy DiGilio, Catherine Carver, then Dana Brown.
Hello, my name is Nancy DiGilio. I live at 103 Mayfair Place, and I'm in the North Stafford District. As previously mentioned, your only job here is to educate our children on the core subjects. You have no place molding our children in any other way, and we should not have to be afraid of our children being exposed to ideas that are anti-ethical to our values, which CRT and the support of the LGBTQ ideology are. If our nation abandons its values, its roots, we will fail. We will end up with nothing to bind us together, nothing to base our laws on, and nothing in the end to set us as a shining example of that shining city on a hill. Our values, when we are true to them, make us great. We must return to them and stay true to them and reject all efforts to upend them. About a year ago, I heard the term critical race theory for the first time. I had not experienced it previously, but my first thought was, well, that's simply bad philosophy. Our race is not our critical and most important quality, our humanity is. CRT is taking an accidental and making it essential. This can do nothing but lead to division, discrimination, and a splintering of our society because it does not honor our commonalities, but accentuates and makes priority our differences, as it forces us to look suspiciously of others, judging them before we get to know them. If our schools teach this, we will be teaching our children to return to the years of prejudice and discrimination to the degree that we have only previously read about in our history books. As for allowing our children to pick their pronouns, to encourage such behavior is to encourage a sickness. Instead of truly loving the child and helping them, we're encouraging them to destroy their body. If a child were bulimic and anorexic, identifying as fat, would we help them to binge and purge, less celebrate it? Would we make available special facilities in the schools to make them more comfortable vomiting their lunches? What you are encouraging now is not only dangerous, as it opens private bathrooms and locker rooms to allow any biological sex in any protected space, but it is also going to permanently destroy the very lives you are claiming to protect, as you encourage mental illness instead of being healed to be embraced. You are going to rob our children of help they can get years before they become an adult and ruin their lives forever. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Catherine Carver, then Dina Brown, and then Sue Partike.
Good afternoon. I'm Catherine Carver. I'm at 225 Butler Road, Falmouth, Virginia, and I live in the Falmouth district. Virginia has often been on the wrong side of history. Remember just a couple of times, we closed public schools in Virginia in order to keep from segregating. We passed a law stating that marriage was between one man and one woman. That's in the recent past. In the less recent past, Virginia's largest industry in the 19th century was slavery. Richmond was one of the largest slaveholding centers in the South. Finally, Virginia was absolutely on the wrong side of the Civil War. When I was growing up, I was taught that the Civil War was a righteous cause, that slavery was a benign system, that most enslaved people were happy. I watched movies with singing and dancing of slaves. So do I want my children and grandchildren to be taught this tripe? No, indeed. I want them to be taught how horrible slavery was and the way sharecropping and convict leasing has helped perpetuate it. I want them to know the ways government passed laws to perpetuate inequity. I want them to know and understand the importance of human rights. Only by knowing can we hope to prevent mistakes of the past. Only by knowing can our future lawmakers move forward with compassion. Critical race theory is just a dog whistle. Teach our children the way history was and not a romanticized version of the way we wish it were. Now, in the 1970s, I was referred to as Ms. Catherine Carson Carver, not Miss or Mrs. At that time, it was a big deal being called Ms. It hurt no one, and yet people refused to recognize it. Today, 2021, I am still Ms. Catherine Carson Carver, and there is nary a blink of an eye at its use. Being referred to by the pronoun that most fits the innermost part of self also hurts no one. Simply put, gender pronouns are words we use to refer to people. These terms fit some people, but not everyone identifies with them. Some people use they as their gender pronoun. Others use newer words like ze and here. By using mindful pronouns in our everyday life, we are creating a culture of inclusion for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and questioning youth and adults alike. If you think LGBTQ starts in adulthood, you are really fooling yourself.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dana Brown.
Hi, I'm Dana Brown. I live at 41 St. William's Way in the Rock Hill District, and I'm here to support your resolution to hold funding for the schools for teaching CRT-related materials. I did read in the paper this morning that one of the school board members is against this, as she thinks that it would create a toxic work environment. What I don't think she realizes is the environment is already toxic, especially for the students. They've been doing some really dumb stuff across the street lately, and some of them are very arrogant about it. And frankly, I don't even know if the whole school board or the acting superintendent really knows what's going on in our classroom, but I am fine with drawing a red line in the sand. Our schools belong to the community, and someone needs to pull the reins in every now and then, so I thank you for getting involved. And I also want to thank the schools in advance for not getting up here and dismissively stating that the public doesn't know what CRT is. We do. And if the schools aren't teaching CRT-related materials, then they have nothing to worry about. Thank you.
Thank you. Sue Partike, Hank Sharpenberg, and then Monica Gary. like how we have the trail people and sprinkled in between.
Madam Chairman, board members, good afternoon. Thank you for hearing us. My name is Sue Partike. I live at 106 Shaw Court, Chatham Landing in the George Washington District. You've heard plenty from us about our objections to the trail, and you'll hear some more today. But for me, I'd like to focus a little bit on just the logistics. I can somewhat understand the desire to keep the path off roadways and in more natural settings, but this option is just not going to work. It was never optimal. And now Ferry Farm has refused to allow the trail to cross their property. Yet in spite of all the obstacles, the county's still hoping, somehow, to fit this square peg into a round hole, regardless of how it affects those of us who live in the round hole. From Chatham Bridge, you'll have to build a bridge across Claiborne Run, shore up the utility easement stretch of Dairy Lane where the road's being undercut by erosion, actually move Dairy Lane to make room for the trail next to it. And then you'll have gotten trail users only as far as the traffic tunnels under the train bridge, a half-mile portion of the trail at best. If that's not enough to test the cost-benefit analysis, you can't accomplish this without getting the necessary land from Chatham Landing HOA. Your only options are to negotiate with the community or take the land through eminent domain. We can promise that whatever course you choose, it will be a lengthy one. Just how long will VDOT wait? We would urge the board to abandon the Chatham Landing option for the trail and to either find another route or move on to funding the next project on the county's list. Thank you.
Thank you. Hank Sharpenberg, Monica Gary, and then Sharon Foley.
I'm Hank Sharpenberg, and I reside at 2342 Courthouse Road in the Aquia District. During your last two meetings, many parents publicly expressed their concerns about the indoctrination their children were receiving in Stafford classrooms. I'm sure all of you have received similar complaints from parents about the disturbing things being taught to students. At your last meeting, the acting superintendent of the Stafford County School System, Dr. Brown, assured those in attendance that critical race theory was not being taught in the classrooms. But in what was a deeply troubling statement, he indicated to you that addressing complaints about what individual teachers were doing in their classrooms was a distraction, and he would direct his staff not to respond. It is clear the administration is out of control and believes they are not accountable to anyone. As that appears to be the case, I would like to make two recommendations. First, the voters of this county should require candidates for the school board, the Board of Supervisors, and the Virginia legislature to clearly state their position on the teaching of critical race theory and similar ideas in our classrooms so that voters may elect representatives who will ensure students receive a quality education and not a political indoctrination. Second, the Board of Supervisors should withhold 20% of the school system's next budget request until the school board and school administration can account for in detail how and where our taxpayer dollars are spent. I am personally in favor of paying good teachers and school bus drivers competitive wages, but I am adamantly opposed to creating bureaucracies that push their own social agendas and act as if they are accountable to no one. Thank you.
We have Monica Gary, Sharon Foley, and Elaine Calendar.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Monica Gary. I live at 40 Dons Way in the Aquia District. Firstly, I'd like to state that despite Paul Mildy's enticing narrative about me, I do not support CRT being taught in our schools, nor am I out to change road names. This board's proposed resolution states that the board does not support the teaching of the 1619 project and CRT and, quote, related principles. What is concerning is that Ms. Vanuch is gathering her definition of CRT from Wikipedia. Also concerning is that this board does not seek in this resolution to define related principles. The ambiguity of this resolution needs to be resolved before the board can consider taking a vote on it. Definitions need to be clearly stated and in detail with accurate citations. This board needs to vote on facts, not the expressed opinions of supervisors who have already landed us in a county lawsuit for discrimination against the Muslim community. In regards to the students being asked their preferred pronouns, there is no easy answer. There are children who think twice to state their physical sex as also being their gender. That is what might be normal for them. But there are also children who have struggled to navigate their gender and sexual identity and have been outcast from friend groups or family, among other unspeakable things. I simply ask that you have empathy for these children, and I ask that you not demonize teachers for at least wanting to create safer spaces for them at school than some of them may ever even know in their own homes. Lastly, to threaten to pull funding from our already chronically underfunded school system is in an attempt to enforce your own worldview on others is unacceptable. The removal of nuance is tyranny. Our children were already having these conversations long before any prompting or participation of teachers. Our children are having beautiful, complex, and important conversations about humanity, and I am disappointed that I am not able to say the same thing about this board. If you want real solutions, encourage the school board to provide third-party facilitated surveys to parents, teachers, and students regarding these matters. Everyone deserves a voice, and none of those voices ought to be drowned out by political agendas on either side of this issue. Thank you.
Sharon Foley, Elaine Calendar, and then Alyssa Halstead.
Good afternoon, Board. My name is Sharon Foley. I live at 49 Fountain Drive in the Aquia District. I'm here in response to your agenda item on proposed resolution R21-357 regarding the 1619 project, critical race theory, and student pronoun selection. The language of the resolution repeatedly states, and I paraphrase, whereas the board has received numerous communications from parents, students, and concerned citizens, regarding these topics, and you go on to say you'll withhold funding if the schools do not comply. It was hard to choose my words because this resolution combines 3 separate topics, not allowing adequate consideration of any of them. You've said received numerous communications. What about the numerous students whose history you don't want to discuss? According to the Virginia Department of Education, in the 2020-2021 school year, there were 16,349 students in Stafford County who identified as a race other than white. That's 56% of the school population. Have you considered those students? In 2021, are you, as an elected body, going to be known as the board who codified a policy that says we won't discuss the history of specific ethnic and racial groups in this country? Have you considered the expertise of the hundreds of educators who can't be here today because you scheduled the discussion of this agenda topic at 3 p.m. while they're all still working? The pronoun issue has been addressed by the Virginia legislature. The schools cannot discriminate against transgender students. I'm a white woman with children in Stafford schools. I want them to learn about our history, the good, the bad, and the ugly. This will make them good citizens. I want them to learn to be kind and respectful to all people. This will make them good people. Your approved budget for 2022 envisions a Stafford in 2040 that, and I quote, will provide unparalleled education opportunities, a well-planned community, and one of the most desired locations in which to live, work, play, and raise a family. That's your vision. If you pass this resolution, you will be well on your way to building a Stafford that ignores history, negates the reality of the majority of our student population, and wastes taxpayer money on politics rather than addressing the critical needs of this community. I had hoped we were building a Stafford where Confederate flags on 80-foot poles were no longer welcome. This resolution tells me I was wrong.
Elaine Calendar, Alyssa Halstead, and then Angela Pitts.
Elaine Calendar, 622 Lancaster Street. I must say I am not much smarter now on the topic of critical race theory because of item 13 on your agenda. I don't recall the supervisors dictating before what is taught in our schools. I thought the supervisors were in charge of providing funding to support the elected school board,
which determines school policy and hires a superintendent who oversees staff and facilities. In my research, what I learned is that right-wing partisans across the country speak out against the teaching of critical race theory, definition unclear, as a means of rallying their voters. They object to theories of systemic racism and the examination of our nation's history as pertains to race. I'm thinking passing this resolution won't have the result intended. New census figures show that our population in Stafford is significantly more diverse in racial makeup than it was 10 years ago. I know that the Black population in our county includes a lot of well-educated and financially well-off professionals. These are the parents of school children, and they are voters. They aren't going to stand for having precious funds pulled from the schools for your reasons. I also think that the Board of Supervisors, acting on the county's behalf, opens itself up to lawsuits. As regards the board's concern that some teachers ask students their preferred pronouns in recognition of the fact that a percentage of the student body doesn't identify with the gender of their birth. This is territory that the board should steer clear of from a legal standpoint. After the embarrassing expose about Governor Ralph Northam's ties to Virginia's racist past, Virginia has made great strides. Let's not take a step backward by passing this ridiculous resolution. I have a whole lot more I could say. And, well, I still got a little bit of time, so let me say it. I'm proud. The Department of Education has Ed Equity Virginia that talks about equity in our education,
Ms.
and
Calendar,
we need to
thank
be
you.
focused on that.
Thank you. Okay, we have Alyssa Halstead, Angela Pitts, and Terrence Pyron. Sorry, thank you. Did I butcher your last name? Sorry. Go ahead,
I have to do
Alyssa.
it. Push that there. Can you hear
You're
me?
good.
Is that good? Alyssa Halstead, 16 Tankard Road, Stafford, Virginia, Hartwood District. I had different things to say, but in hearing what people are talking about here, I'm going to switch my thoughts a minute here. And I'm hearing a lot about equity and about the races and the cultures or whatever, but what I'm not hearing anything about is actually the kids and what the place of these things is. Public education paid for by public dollars, public tax-paying dollars, means that the public should agree categorically 100% overall what's being taught, how it's being taught, and the reasons why it's being taught, which you cannot do with critical race theory or any of the other things. We all have different religious beliefs. By bringing critical race theory in, you're negating a lot of my religious beliefs as well, which is unfair. When I've asked a group of constituents earlier, how would you feel if I recommended that we put prayer back in school? They were categorically against it. That's an ideology that doesn't belong in public schools, but everything else does. Why is that? This is my belief. So I disagree with the fact that the Board of Supervisors shouldn't step in when the school's administrations are clearly out of line. I listened to my student's government teacher last year teach him virtually. I have never been so disgusted in my whole life with what I heard coming out of that computer screen from that teacher's mouth. He taught directly from his own belief system, how he saw the world, and he sought to ask the kids only questions that led them to his answer. Not to the right one, not to find their own, but to his answer. So let's talk about hate for 1 second. My daughter was 4 years old. She was in preschool. She defended a friend of hers. The little her ran up to her and told her he was going to go home, get his gun, and shoot her and her mother. That level of hate wasn't to her kids, but he had 3 kids, 3 older kids in that school, high school kids, who were listening to music like this, talking this thing. And if we're going to bring our kids back to a level of the respect that they need to show, then we need to start showing it to each other. And we have not found equality across the board. Where's the plan for schools? When are we going to start teaching kids again about the good that this police department does and stop allowing this rhetoric about that? Because if you're going to bring critical race theory in, then I sure as heck want a program about that as well. And I want how much their history has been degraded over the last 9 years, 10 years, whatever it may be. Hate is being taught, nothing else. This isn't about history. This isn't about what slavery was to this country. This is about indecisiveness. Our kids have had enough. For 2 years, we have allowed them to be tortured by this system. It's enough. We cannot put this back together. So when they're each other, that's on you if you don't act today. That's on everybody in this audience for not stopping it when they had the chance.
Thank you. Angela Pitts, and then Terrence Pyron, and Gary Adkins is next.
Angela Pitts, 9 Cobham Court. I'm in the Rock Hill District. So I have actually not prepared. I didn't come here prepared with a speech because I wanted to listen to what people were saying. And so I want to, first of all, thank you for acknowledging Latin American History Month. I feel like in my education, I'm over 50, I did not get enough history or an understanding of Latin American history. I think the gentleman who explained about the case that led up to the board, Brown versus Board of Education. So I also want to say that I'm dismayed and angry that anybody would be threatened for their viewpoints. I'm also angry, as equally, or not equally, but also angry and dismayed that people are threatening budgets over their viewpoints, okay? I agree with the person who said, or the people who have said, that not enough information is coming from the board as to how you're defining critical race theory and related topics. I often hear, and this is of course, you know, in everybody's information source that, you know, everybody's preferred information source, Facebook, that it is related to diversity. I hear it's about hate. I hear it's about a lot of different things, and I think that clearly when you hear the people having talked today, that they don't understand, the community doesn't know what it is either. Not sure that the people who are making the decision today over this resolution understand what it is. My understanding, and I'm not a law student, I haven't studied critical legal studies, but my understanding is that it is a graduate level examination of systems and systemic bigotry or racism, not just racism, but you know, the inequities that are perpetuated through our systems. Well, you have to have a college level understanding of those systems before you can have those conversations. So I'm not really sure why we're talking about critical race theory. I have a suspicion that it is an effort to thwart diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is why this resolution includes pronouns 1619 project, which is, you know, could be used or taught in high school classes or middle school classes. I don't get the understanding, or it doesn't seem to me that enough people have actually even seen or heard 1619 project to make this presumption that it should not be taught in schools. But I'd like to focus on that because I have been a teacher, an English teacher, and I have taught Huck Finn, I've taught The Great Gatsby.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
Okay.
3 minutes goes quick. Terrence Pyron, and I'm sorry if I'm saying your...
Got it right, thank you.
Did I? Okay.
Good afternoon, my name is Terrence Pyron. I currently live at 108 Shaw Court. This is about the Belmont Ferry Farm Trail update. I've been a federal law enforcement officer with the United States Secret Service for about 23 years, and I'm trained to expect the worst of every situation. In my expert opinion, no good can come from the proposed trail. Most trails in our area go through well-traveled, open areas that have a decent street lighting. The current proposed trail goes through a dark, wooded area. This is away from the main roads. It is dark, there is no lighting at all in that area, and it goes through an area that for years has been home to a number of homeless camps. Over the 16-plus years I've lived in this area, Stafford County sheriffs have been called to clear the woods behind our homes and by the bridge area due to these homeless camps. Adding a trail in a thick wooded area that is not well traveled, that is poorly lit, creates an easy opportunity for anyone walking the trail to get harassed or do other harm to people walking on the trail. We are hopeful that the county decides that the safety of our community and the county of residents is more important than a walking trail that goes to nowhere. Thank you.
Okay, Gary Adkins, you're next. Oh, look how conveniently close you were there. Next up is Matt LeGordon and Emily M. Hall.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Yeah, my name is Gary Atkins. I live at 6 Long Court, Fredericksburg, Virginia, 22405, Stafford County in the Falmouth District. Madam Chair, members of the board, I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. All too often, residents come and complain to you about your policies and decisions on any number of issues. I'm here today to commend the members of the Board of Supervisors who have demonstrated that you care enough about our youth and that you have the courage to ensure that they are not led astray through malign ideological indoctrination. All across our nation, Marxist ideology has been and continues to be injected into the education system. It has spread from university level and is now reaching into our public schools, into the minds of K through 12 students. The 1619 Project and critical race theory is being promoted in myriad locales around the nation. Objective research and critical thinking confirms that both of these are rooted in Marxist theory and ideology. The goal of those who promote CRT is to dismantle America with the ultimate objective of the complete overthrow of free markets, freedom of speech, Christianity, Judeo-Christian culture, federalism, Western civilization, separation of powers, and the U.S. Constitution, our God-given rights, equality under the law, and even the American constitutional republic itself. This can be seen clearly in the effort to demonize each of these as a product of, or even cast it as the perpetuator of white supremacy and systemic racism. If the evil forces behind CRT are allowed to succeed, America will go the way of many nations before it: China, Cuba, Cambodia, Vietnam, Germany, Russia, Ukraine, Venezuela, Angola, Mozambique, North Korea, and many others. That's just to name a few. Since the curtain has been drawn back, some jurisdictions of the 1619 Project and their offshoots have been recognized for what they are. Its proponents are constantly dreaming up new terms and phrases to provide cover for it. After all, it is a core CRT itself is simply rebranded Marxist propaganda. Today, the poison is as well as the danger and unhealthy isms are being camouflaged behind seemingly innocuous and non-threatening terminologies such as equity, social justice, inclusion, inclusivity, and diversity, and so on. No matter what disguise this monster takes, it must be opposed, exposed, and defeated. I commend the county supervisors for taking the initiative to provide the oversight in this area, and I urge you to pass R21-357 and to continue monitoring the assault on the minds of our young generations. Not one red cent. Thank you.
Matthew LeGordon, Emily M. Hall, and then Connie Wiley.
Good afternoon, board. My name is Matthew Gordon. I live at 812 Shaw Court. I'm here to talk about the trail. I provided you a packet of pictures of some things that I'd like to talk about. I currently just moved into the area. My girlfriend and I just bought a house there at 812 Shaw Court. We had a baby, and then we found out about this trail. I'm prior Marine Corps. I decided to go ahead and walk it myself since you guys have cleared most of it. And security-wise, for our neighborhood, it's bad. It literally comes right up against where our children are going to be playing. My 3-month-old, who is going to grow into this neighborhood, will be in danger. With that being said, though, when I walked the trail today, I was seeing bald eagles flying around out there, and it was gorgeous. It was amazing. I would love to see a trail go through there. I did see large bird nests that are in that area, and I'm wondering if we could be possibly hurting an endangered species that currently lives here. I mean, that's one thing that we pride ourselves on in this area is our population of bald eagles, and I'd like to have ecological studies done to make sure that that's not happening. And that's really all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Emily Hall, Connie Wiley, and then Jason Snow.
Good afternoon. My name is Emily Hall. I'm at 24 Arbor Lane in the Garrisonville District. I'm a former high school English teacher and a parent of children attending 4 separate public schools in Stafford County. I'm strongly in opposition of the proposed resolution that calls for denouncing the 1619 project, CRT, and the teaching of student pronoun selection in Stafford County Public Schools. As educators, our job is to prepare students for the real world, a world which we hope that our students approach with open-mindedness and respect for others. Allowing students to be addressed by the pronouns with which they associate can only be considered common courtesy and human decency. We've always asked students by what name they'd like to be addressed because a teacher's goal is to create an environment in which students feel comfortable and accepted. Pronouns are no different, but it's not enough to simply honor a student's request. It means more to be asked. Being asked allows students to feel like it's okay to answer honestly. Being asked tells students that this is a safe place of acceptance. Kids are still learning to advocate for themselves. Without asking the question, a student may spend an entire year feeling unsure, and those feelings are a hindrance to a student's ability to learn. Students learn best when they are safe, fed, and heard. As a county, we are meeting 2 of those needs head-on every day. But we need to listen. It hurts no one to be kind, to be respectful, to be accepting, but it will hurt our students if we're not. Open-mindedness and respect don't just apply to pronouns. CRT is highly controversial, as we've heard today, but that controversy can only benefit our students. Learning through different lenses, examining the world through a variety of perspectives, and analyzing controversial issues and coming to your own conclusion based on facts, research, and debate are necessary skills with lifelong importance and application. To look at our history and our present from one angle not only limits our students' understanding and ability to be open-minded, it has the potential to alienate many of our kids. Additionally, this board has demonstrated a struggle to understand CRT as a whole, which is not uncommon, and to understand its implications in the classroom. It's a gray area, it's not concrete, and it can be argued that the tenets of CRT have been in the classroom for decades. These gray areas create a very slippery slope. What is deemed CRT today may be expanded upon tomorrow with more and more authors, publications, and curricula being banned. Is it really the board's job to dictate what is and is not taught in the classroom? We've cultivated not only an educated and experienced faculty and staff in every school to make these decisions, but an elected school board as well. I understand that constituents may be making a fuss, but a gentle reminder to appeal to the school board is more appropriate than this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Connie Wiley, Jason Snow, Albert Whitley, and then Maureen Sigmund, and those are the only speaker cards that I have.
All right. My name is Connie Wiley, and I've lived at 1002 Shaw Court for 25 years. I regularly use and enjoy the walking trails around Fredericksburg and Stafford. Until the Chatham Bridge project, I frequently walked between our development, Chatham Landing, and Old Town using Naomi Road to get to the bridge. I'm looking forward to the new bridge opening so that I can walk to shops and services again. Bike paths are one of the things that make this area enjoyable, living here enjoyable. But as a frequent walker, I am trying to understand what value is added by pursuing the proposed route through Chatham Landing property, across a narrow passage over Clyburn Run, and then back to Naomi, only to run into the railroad bridge. I won't reiterate the many reasons for not running the trail through the development's common property, including policing issues, safety of our children, increased traffic, and others. These concerns are real, especially to us. As many Chatham Landing homeowners agree, a bike trail connecting the Chatham Bridge with Ferry Farm may seem attractive on the surface, but running the trail across our common property simply because you can is not a very good idea. At the very least, Naomi Road is a more realistic route. If you must, add a walking lane to Naomi that would not encroach on homeowners' property or generate safety concerns. Please do not make a poorly thought-out decision just to retain a little bit of federal funding. We are not against the concepts of trails, but we who live there, who are most familiar with the issues and who will suffer the greatest negative impact, are opposed to this idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wiley. Jason Snow, Albert Whitley, and then Maureen Sigmund.
My name is Jason Snow. I live at 5 Pierre Emanuel Court, Fredericksburg. I'm a high school student here in Stafford. I will not be speaking about critical race theory, as I have not been educated on it. I don't understand it, and I do not believe that many of the people in this room also understand it. Instead, I will be speaking about student pronoun selection. I believe, first, that does not have any place in a resolution primarily about critical race theory. Those are two entirely separate issues. Second, I believe wholeheartedly that student pronoun selection does not hurt anybody. However, a lack thereof does. The revocation of the rights of students to be referred to as they wish directly attacks transgender students. They already... Hold on. My generation is already known to suffer with mental health. Depression is known to be very common, and various other issues. Transgender people especially are prone to such issues. Not respecting them and their chosen gender, I guess. That's bad wording. Not respecting them in the way that they want to be referred is known to be extremely harmful to them and their mental health, especially in pronouns. Okay, that's all, I think.
Albert Whitley, and then Maureen Sigmund.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Albert Whitley, 3 Sarah Court, Fredericksburg, it's Office 17. For the critical race theory, the key word is theory. What's the definition of theory? Theory is an idea that has not been proven. It's not a fact. Additionally, the 1619 Project has been debunked by historians. It occurred before the United States was even formed. We do not need to be dividing the people. We need to be uniting the people. Unfortunately, the only way you can control and affect behavior is with the purse strings. I understand the need to get the Board of Education on board with taking critical race theory out. It is a Marxist idea. It's been delivered by multiple people who have lived in Marxist countries, and they're very fearful because this is what they grew up with and this is what they fled. In addition, on the gender pronoun, are you going to punish the teacher because they use the wrong pronoun? They see a male, they're going to say he. If they see a female, they're going to say she. It may not be the gender of choice, but if they don't know those students, how are you going to know which pronoun if you've only met them one day and then you've got them up on charges because they used the wrong pronoun? And as a side note, as I spoke with Cindy earlier today, I am very much in favor of the Board of Supervisors providing funding to HOAs who are doing reconstruction projects of their stormwater management systems, and I hope that will continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay. The last speaker I have is Maureen Sigmund.
Hello, my name is Maureen Sigmund. I live in the Garrisonville district, and we have 3 children currently in school. Because of that, I kind of believe an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. We live in a county that has the SEA. We live in a state that has the VEA. They are all charter orgs of the NEA. And in June, the NEA passed new business item 39, which says that they are going to work nationally to promote CRT. They do define it. I have emailed you a copy of that resolution because I would like to know to what extent our county is going to adopt that and promote that from our chartered organizations. This, for me, the most pressing issue is on October 14th, the NEA and whoever's in line with them are going to have a National Day of Action in honor of the birth date of George Floyd. If our schools or even individual teachers, I know SCA is a membership organization, not a school organization, I would like to know if any of that is going to happen in our county and to what extent that's going to be expressed. I did see that they are promoting curriculum called Black Lives Matters in School. I did look into that as a parent who wants to be educated on those sort of things. Black Lives Matters in School is a free curriculum, and it does combine both race and gender, and that might be why that is combined here. But it does include racial acceptance, transgender acceptance, and queer acceptance in curriculum packages from preschool through high school. For everybody who says CRT is not a K-12 issue, I don't know why then our NEA is working to promote it and has elected to do so on a national level. I think we look at the resolution, we look at their definition of CRT. If that's what we as a county decide to restrict, that's the elected official's position. But to say that it's not happening when a K-12 organization is working, publicly spending member dollars to promote it, it's coming, or it may be coming. That's what we need to find out, and that's what we need to decide for our county. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I did just get 2 more speaker cards, and then I'll be opening it up to anybody in the audience who maybe didn't fill out a speaker card. So next we have, I think it says Michelle Wickman, and then Shannon Edwards.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Michelle Wickman. I reside at 305 Bentley Court in Stafford. I didn't think I was going to get here in time, but I made it, and so I'm a little out of breath. We walked real fast, and I'm just going to read the email that I sent last night. So I'm speaking tonight not just for myself, but for the, actually last time I looked, 630 people who had signed my petition in the last 18 hours. Regardless of your or your constituents' feelings on the subject, Stafford County is required to adopt policies, procedures, and practices for an inclusive school environment for our gender-diverse students. Adopting a resolution that is at its heart a barrier to such inclusivity is almost certainly in violation of state code. Even if semantics are found otherwise, the spirit of the law is surely in jeopardy. The vague language of this resolution is very concerning. If you're truly planning to denounce the teaching of CRT and related principles in Stafford County Public Schools, this is also something you'll need to take up with the Virginia Department of Education, as it will be nearly impossible to teach elements of history such as the Civil War, Jim Crow laws, and segregation without discussion of some principles that are related to CRT. For example, see page 10 of the VDOE curriculum for U.S. history, which is required by the state. CRT is an umbrella term right now. It is being thrown around without real understanding of its meaning. As I previously quoted, the term critical race theory is now cited as the basis of all diversity and inclusion efforts, regardless of how much it's actually informed those programs. Please don't make a reactionary decision based on growing public concern over a term that really isn't understood. As Dr. Jones stated 2 weeks ago, we teach the VDOE curriculum. That isn't up for debate. Drafting this resolution amounts to publicly stating that you don't trust SCPS educators as professionals. Micromanaging the way we educate is not your job. As a governing body, tying your personal views to school funding is both unprofessional and unethical. Please continue to foster a positive working relationship with the school board instead of damaging that relationship by setting this dangerous precedent. Thank you.
Thank you. Shannon Edwards.
Good evening, board members. My name is Shannon Edwards, and I am a sophomore at North Stafford High School. I didn't think we were going to get here in time, so I didn't really prepare a speech, but I do have some things to say. The fact that you've included pronouns in your critical race theory revision is ridiculous, to say the least. Pronouns are a basic fact of language, any language. I've been learning pronouns since the first grade. It's common courtesy, like asking for somebody's name. If someone told you their name was Matt, you wouldn't call them Mark. That's just not how it works. Asking for pronouns is just a basic, decent thing to do. People in my classroom, sorry. I have multiple transgender friends in my classrooms who are terrified that they are going to have to out themselves to their teachers and to administrators because they feel they can't be who they are without judgment. Asking for somebody's pronouns isn't just common courtesy to anybody. It's also making sure that people feel safe and that showing them that they care. I would like to show people that we care. So please, just think about other students in this county. Think about transgender people in general, or even just normal people. Because that's all we are. We're just people, and we all deserve respect.
Okay, that was all the speaker cards that I have. So in order to keep it orderly, what I'd like to do is open up this side of the room. If you are here to speak and you didn't fulfill a card, if you just want to sort of line up in the back and filter toward the front. Okay, come on down. You coming? Yep. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Sarah Taylor. I reside at 1146 James Madison Circle in the Falmouth District. I'm a high school teacher at North Stafford High School, so I wasn't sure if I was going to get here on time, but I left earlier than I have for, months to make sure I could. I felt that part of my duty as a teacher was to speak on behalf of my students. And I've heard concern from my students about your resolution to ban teachers from inquiring what their students' preferred pronouns are. I actually agree that it shouldn't be required. That raises the risk of pressuring a student to out themselves before they're ready to share that information with the world. But respectfully, privately, requesting or giving them an option to share their preferred pronouns is a way to indicate that you are a safe person for that transgender or non-binary student to approach, to talk to be themselves with. And so making it clear what it is that you are objecting to would be an important part of this conversation. If you are objecting to students being non-binary and transgender, please be clear that that's what you're objecting to. If you're objecting to them being open about it, well, it's too late. They're very open about it at the high school level, at the middle school level, and at the elementary school level. And it's not just the children. There are staff members who are open about their status within the LGBTQ plus spectrum. And if discomfort is the reason that some of you are considering this resolution, you need to question that discomfort. And if the discomfort of students who are hearing these pronouns being requested is the issue, then the source of that discomfort comes from not being aware of the other cultures that they're surrounded by, and they're not going to be able to avoid that just by not hearing pronouns. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, come on down, yeah. He psyched us out a little bit.
Good afternoon. My name is James Fisher. I live at 6 Scarlet Oak Circle. I'm speaking this afternoon against the teaching of critical race and other similar theories in our public schools. In my opinion, the Virginia Governor's African American History Education Commission report regarding the teaching of African American history in our schools promotes destructive racial ideologies and represents the most thoroughly negative view of America's history and pessimism about its future as a nation that I've ever encountered. One of the authors cited in the governor's report, Glenn Singleton, claims that white talk is impersonal, intellectual, and task-oriented, while minority speech is emotional. That stereotypes minorities as being simple-minded and irrational. He further teaches that individualism is a form of cultural racism and depicts planning ahead and individualism as racist or white traits, that it is racist to expect minorities to exhibit that characteristic, and that only whites who benefit from white privilege and institutional racism can be racist. Now, following that report, a memo from James Lane, Virginia's Superintendent of Public Instruction, came out in which he states, "We encourage division superintendents to work with your faculty and schools to ensure that lessons are designed with racial sensitivity and cultural competence in mind." So does that mean Stafford County Public Schools is considering teaching CRT? I don't know. Do you? You fund them. What I do know is that critical race theory and the crusade against American history is toxic. It's an ideological poison that, if not removed, will dissolve the civic bonds that bind us. It teaches our children to see other kids through a strictly identity group lens. A school system curriculum that teaches students to look at everything through the lens of race is guilty of the very thing it warns against, racism. So I ask you, do you support public schools separating first graders into groups of oppressors and oppressed? Do you support public schools teaching that individualism is a form of cultural racism? Do you support mandatory curricula that is dehumanizing and condescending to black people? And do you support mandatory curricula teaching that all white people are racist and that all white people play a part in perpetuating systemic racism? If you answered no, then I urge you to do everything within your power to prevent the Stafford County School Board from allowing the teaching of CRT in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Deanna Fisher. I live at 6 Scarlet Oak Circle, Stafford, Virginia. As a parent of 2 school-age children, I'm very concerned about the teaching of the ideals and tenets of CRT, as well as the practice of asking students to identify their preferred pronouns in our schools. Despite claims to the contrary by the Stafford County School Board and Superintendent of Schools, I have examples of both of these being done in the classrooms with both of my children. And I am appalled that the school board continues to deny and refuse to discuss the real concerns of parents regarding these important issues. I would like to point out that they don't have to call it CRT in the curriculum to teach the tenets of CRT in the classroom. Some people claim that CRT is only a course taught in college and is not taught in Stafford County. However, many teachers and organizations around the country have proudly proclaimed that they have found ways to disguise CRT and present it in schools under good-sounding terms like equity, inclusion, culturally responsive teaching, etc. The sad part is, all of those things should be good, but they often are not. The principles of CRT, no matter what they are named, cause damage to our children and our communities. In Stafford, it is not called CRT and might not be taught in history class, but it is taught by inserting into assignments in other subjects. Last year, my high school son was given an assignment in English regarding the American dream. He was asked to interview people and then write a paper discussing their answers. One of the questions he was told to ask was something along the lines of, do you think the American dream is available to everyone or just white people born into wealth? Unfortunately, he said most of the students he interviewed said that they believed the American dream was only for rich white people, not people of color. But just asking that question implies that it's not available to all people, which is the opposite of the idea of the American dream. This year, my middle school son was assigned a poem to read in English class. The poem was about a young black girl in the 1950s who loved to read books and was checking out books from the library. One line read, "Whites like to humiliate Southern blacks." My son said there was no discussion about why that line was in the poem. While I certainly want age-appropriate and accurate history regarding racism taught in school, I feel that having the students read this particular poem with this line in English class without an appropriate history lesson or discussion is a way of slipping CRT into the classroom. I'm also opposed to teachers asking students to select their preferred pronoun. Both of my children were asked by at least one teacher this year to give their pronoun. In both cases, the teachers could clearly see that my sons are males. What would be the reason to ask every student?
Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am Danielle Cortez, 19 Hidden Springs Lane, the Aquia District. Today, thanks to the leadership of this board and Mr. Snellings, school children are to receive a responsible education devoid of racist stereotyping and oppressor-oppressed curriculum found in critical race theory, which is unequivocally the goal of political educators who wish to divide us. I am not a Republican nor a Democrat, but a proud independent voter who votes issues with respect to character. En un país unido sin color, which means in a united nation devoid of issues of color. Those were the words of Raul Cortez, my uncle, who started the media empire Univision with my father. Another great civil rights hero, Martin Luther King, spoke of being judged by the content of our character, not the color of our skin. At the last board meeting, I came before you to implore this board to support the 14,000 petitioner signatures that my wife and I gathered decades ago establishing our elected school board, and asking you to do all in your power to ensure that any facet of critical race theory would not find the light of day in Stafford schools. Last board meeting, I witnessed from home the sad escape and evade presentation of Dr. Jones, your interim superintendent, who made it clear to this citizen he would not ensure educators would never teach any element of white privilege or social equity programs, or what is occurring in Northern Virginia, where taxpayers footed the $34,000 bill for 55 hours of CRT coaching on white individualism and color group collectivism. If he worked for me, I'd have fired him. To borrow a line with modification from Shakespeare's Hamlet, methinks Dr. Jones doth protest too much. So I will say succinctly what others infer. I do not trust some of the school board, nor this interim superintendent. Sadly, racial politics have invaded every aspect of our lives irresponsibly. However, slavery is an evil place of our history that must be responsibly discussed in the proper context with the great strides we have made to ensure character advances, not the melanin level in our skin. I implore the board to protect our children from this great CRT racist evil theory and ensure no funding finds its way from our taxpayers to promote such a divisive theory that is here, as this board has responsibly suggested. As the responsible independent candidate from the Aquia District, Monica Carey, who has my vote and who has been endorsed by the Democratic Party of Stafford and many Hispanics, she says, do the right thing. I ask you, do the right thing. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Snell.
Okay. Do we have any other speakers on this side? Come on down then. You'll have to jump over Mr. Minor, though.
Good afternoon, Keith Lockett, 240 Revel Road, Stafford, Virginia, acquired district. And I don't have any prepared remarks today because I really came here to learn about CRT and this particular proposal or resolution that was here. And so I found it's better in that mode to receive rather than transmit. So, but here's my takeaway from the discussion that I've heard from the numerous speakers that were here today. To me, what I heard was, you've had about 30 or so speakers here, and I think I've heard 30 or so different definitions of what CRT is and is not. Clearly, there's no consensus of what critical race theory is. And before proceeding, I think, on a resolution to ban something, it would be helpful to know what that something is you're banning. So I would say, really, folks should need to do some homework there to find out what CRT is, critical race theory. The other thing is, by definition, as someone said here before, a theory is an idea that's yet to be proven. It's not an ideology. And half of the people that spoke, or more than half, that spoke here, talked about making sure teachers don't indoctrinate our kids with an ideology. Well, by definition, a theory is not an ideology. So we have a conflict of terms there as well. So all I would say is, in closing, please do, as we ask our kids to do, some homework before we adopt a resolution to know that if we're going to ban something, let's know what it is we're banning before we stop to do it. And that's my takeaway. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else on this side? Okay, see none. Anybody else want to come talk on this side? Come on down. At least you don't have a far walk. And if anybody else on this side wants to get ready and go stand up in the back, you're more than welcome to do so. Go ahead.
My name is Pam Sable, and I live in Chatham Landing.
Can you just move the mic a little closer so we can hear you? There you go. Perfect.
My name is Pam Sable. I live in Chatham Landing at 1009 Shaw Court. I've driven a school bus for Stafford County for 16 years. I'd like to talk about the safety and the dangers of school buses and our children that we'll face if this trail is going through Chatham Landing. Right now, our children wait for the bus at the entrance to Chatham Landing, across from our parking lot. It's a safe place. It's a big grassy area, so kids have plenty of space to wait and don't need to wait near the road. The bus pulls up, the kids load. The driver turns around at the safety utility easement that is Dairy Lane and continues on their route. In the county's plan for this trail, that easement becomes the trail, leaves no safe place for the buses to turn around. They'd have to drive through the neighborhood. The entire neighborhood sits on one loop, that is Shaw Court. The road is narrow, we have no space for sidewalks, and no street parking. The buses would have a difficult navigating the very tight bends, and if there's a delivery truck or landscaping truck or a legally parked car, the bus would be unable to continue around the rest of Shaw Court. One option is to move the kids out onto Naomi Road for pickup. They would have to walk through the road, across the bridge for Claiborne Run that has no side barriers or guardrails and no shoulders to the road. This is the only way to access Naomi from our neighborhood. Once they get to Naomi, they'd have no safe place to wait for the bus. There's no shoulders or sidewalks on the narrow roads. Per Stafford County Public School guidelines, maximum walking distance for an elementary student is 1/10 of a mile, 2/10 of a mile for middle school, 3/10 of a mile for high school. From the back of our neighborhood, it is over 1/10 of a mile to their current bus stop. It would be a little over 2/10 of a mile to Naomi. Right now, the buses entering from Route 3 on either end of Naomi take up all lanes of traffic to turn. At the log cabin end, buses cannot safely make the right-hand turn leaving Naomi to get onto Route 3. The buses would have to back up onto Dairy Lane where the bridge is to turn around and exit through up on the other end of Naomi. However, when Mr. Jaffe builds his apartments, there will be a drastic increase in traffic and no safe place for the kids up there to turn around. So I'm against the bike trail. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on down. Anybody else on this side care to speak? If you do, if you wouldn't mind going and lining up back at in the back of the room, that'd be great. Okay, go ahead when you're ready.
Hello, I'm Eli Steele. I live in the Garrisonville district. I'm a student at Mountain View High School. Not only that, but I am also queer and non-binary. I'm also the vice president of the school's GSA, which stands for Gender Sexuality Alliance. Coming from personal experience, I know what being asked your pronouns feels like, especially for people who are questioning and genderqueer. And it's very helpful to alleviate gender dysphoria, being referred to by your preferred pronouns. And just because, assuming somebody fits into the gender binary because they look feminine or look masculine can be very harmful and can shame people from, coming out and being who they are around administrators, teachers, and other students. We ask members of the GSA at Mountain View what their preferred pronouns are, and I can tell you it ranges in responses from he, him, to she, her, all the way to they, them, he, they, she, they, and even neo-pronouns. It really helps. And you may not see it when you refer to us by our preferred pronouns, but it does. One of my friends earlier this week told me that using a student's preferred pronouns is suicide prevention. Referring them by their preferred name is suicide prevention. Allowing them to use the preferred bathroom to alleviate gender dysphoria is suicide prevention. Allowing teachers to ask for students' pronouns can help prevent so many tragedies that happen, especially in the LGBT community, seeing as our risks of suicide are so much higher than those of cisgendered and heterosexual people. So that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, not seeing anybody, so I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment portion of today's meeting. And at this point, we will bring it back to the board. And just so you guys know sort of how the agenda will work, so we're going to have reports by our different board members, our county attorney, which she typically doesn't have a public report. Then we'll have a quick presentation from our budget and finance director. Then we'll move on to our approval of consent. These all won't take very long. Then we'll be discussing the Ferry Farm Trail. And then we will be moving on to one other item, I think. Let's see, I lost my place here on the agenda. The ARPA fund allocation, and then lastly, it would be the CRT 1619 resolution. So I just wanted to set your expectations that it'll be a little bit, but not too long before we take up that option. So seeing that, Ms. Holmes, would you please do board member reports?
Mr. Dudenheffer.
Just want to say I wasn't here last board meeting, so some of the things I'm hearing kind of for the first time. I was diverted dealing with some severe flooding of family members' homes after Hurricane Ida down in New Orleans. I ask you to please pray for those people who are really, really down. This hurricane hit to the west of New Orleans, not to the east like Hurricane Katrina. So the city of New Orleans, which has had billions of dollars pumped into their levee systems, sustains virtually no damage, just some wind damage, whereas the whole area to the west of New Orleans sustained severe flooding, and it's anything below 4 feet, and my mother-in-law's 90-year-old home had to be thrown out into the street. It's very trying, it's very stressful for those people, so please keep them in your prayers. The news media shows you an initial picture, which doesn't even come close to showing you the severity of the problems there, and now they're off doing something else and have forgotten about those poor people down in South Louisiana and along the entire route of Hurricane Ida. It was pretty bad. My mother-in-law's home sustained winds of over 140 miles an hour. And it's, unfortunately, she didn't have any wind damage, but she had significant hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of flood damage. So I would appreciate if you keep them in your thoughts and prayers as we go forward. Thank you.
Ms. Lamb.
We have a lot to talk about. I'll defer my comments to later.
Mr. Snellings.
I'll defer in the interest of time.
Ms. Baumke.
Yes, just want to update the board real quick. We interviewed 4 candidates yesterday for the George Washington Regional Commission. We've narrowed it down to 2 candidates. At Monday's GWRC meeting, you'll be allowed to decide if you want to participate in the next round of interviews. So more to come on that. Want to let everybody know we had a VRE meeting. Our ridership is only at 15% of pre-pandemic. So we continue to watch the VRE ridership, and as we know, a lot of people are still teleworking, so our numbers aren't going to come back for quite some time. I lastly just want to say I had an opportunity to meet some 90 and 95-year-olds that were with the 6th Marine Division, and they were the last to leave Okinawa in 1945. And it's experiences like these, when you interact with these people that had their last reunion because they're so old, and bless their hearts for traveling on airplanes and getting here. It was a phenomenal experience. We met them out at the Armed Services Memorial. And I just want to share one quick story. This one gentleman, I asked him, where do you live? And he said, we're from Columbus, Ohio. He told me his name. You can look him up yourself. His name was Harry McKnight, 95 years old. He was a pole vaulter at Ohio State University. He coached a little bit at OSU, and he also had the honor and privilege to train with Jesse Owens. They both had the same coach. But he told me every time they score a touchdown, OSU, he still does push-ups. His wife gave me a video of him doing push-ups. He's 95 years old. All I'm saying is I don't have any excuses anymore. Thank you.
Mr. Cohen.
Just really quickly, a simple yes, hoorah. Once a Marine, always a Marine. I just want to thank Ms. Vanucci and for going to that event. Laura Lacey organized it for us, and it was wonderful that we can honor them in that way. So I appreciate that. And the only other thing is I have to fulfill a promise and quote Wayne Brady to say, love you, mama.
Ms. Vanucci.
So I just really quickly wanted to add on to what Ms. Baumke said. We spent the evening with them, and we awarded them a proclamation that we did at our last meeting. And then we also met them at the Armed Services Memorial. And as they got off the buses, we handed them American flags. And I've never seen anyone so proud to display the American flag. And it was just really invigorating, and it was a great day to spend with these individuals and their families. So I'd also like to thank Mr. Cohen, because he worked with Ms. Lacey to get that organized, and I want to thank Ms. Baumke for attending that with me. It was a great time to honor them and to show them a little bit about Stafford and thank them for their service. And that's all my comments. Thank you. Okay, that concludes board member comments. Report from the county attorney.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have no report at this time.
County administrator report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And like you stated earlier, we just have one report for you, and that's the FY21 preliminary year-end results by Andrea Light, our Director of Budget Management.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Computer, please. Cheryl, is the clicker up here? Okay. All right, we're getting fancy. The purpose of this presentation is to provide the board and the community with a snapshot of our fiscal year 2021 unaudited year-end financial reports. We'll quickly go through the general fund, other county funds, and school operating funds. Starting with the general funds, our revenues in excess of budget were about $14.3 million. Again, this is unaudited, and we do anticipate there may be some changes. Real estate revenue was under budget, and that was due in part to the increase in disabled veteran for real estate exoneration. At the beginning of the pandemic last year, when the board adopted the fiscal year 21 budget, you may recall the 13 work sessions that we went through to get to this point, and we did a conservative projection on especially those consumption-type taxes, sales and meals tax. Since then, as we've observed consumer behavior and spending patterns, those have actually exceeded our budget. And recordation tax exceeded our budget by about 113%. Typically, when interest rates go down, our interest revenue goes down and our recordation goes up, but this was even more than we had anticipated. Motor vehicle license fees were under budget significantly due to the change in that fee from $23 to $0. Building permit fees really are driving the increase in the permits, fees, and licenses. They're about $1.5 million or 62% above this budget. This anomaly appears to be right-sizing itself in fiscal year 22, where we're seeing a much reduced number of building permits. Parks and recreation charges were under budget due to our limitations of the COVID pandemic. And the fall VPSA borrow repaid $5.7 million to fund balance. State and federal grants are revenues and expenditures are still under review, and they're slightly under budget as we're going through the remainder of those. General fund expenditures came in under budget. Essential spending and hiring freezes during the first quarter of the fiscal year 21 that the board put in place as we move through the pandemic helped spur department savings. Vacancy savings exceeded the budget, again, partly due to that first quarter hiring freeze. Exceeded the budget by about $850,000 in the general fund. Health insurance savings was $1.5 million across all funds. We'll bring that back to the board at the third quarter presentation to ask that it be budgeted and appropriated to be sent to OPEB as is in accordance with our policies. Thank you. Juvenile detention center savings is about $667,000 this year. That's about 45% of our overall expenditure. And public day school had a savings of $42,000. All of our fund balance policies requirements will be met. Increase to capital projects reserve for the county will be $3.4 million. The board made some strategic decisions with the CARES Act funding to use some of those to support public safety salaries. And so we have saved $7.3 million in those public safety salaries by putting those to CARES Act. Personal property tax rate increase will provide for $2.4 million for transportation, and that will help support the road bond projects. We will also have changes based on our past practices for increases for county major projects of $4 million for recordation revenues in excess of budget, and increase of school major capital projects of $1.5 million for debt service savings of about $600,000 and meals tax revenues in excess of budget, which was approximately $900,000. Quickly, I'll go through the other funds. Tourism fund saw positive results at the end of the year. They worked with a very, very tightly managed budget and were still able to increase tourism fund balance by $161,000. Their fiscal year 21 budget was 42% below fiscal year 2020 in anticipation of reduced transient occupancy tax. Transportation fund, fuels tax revenues was slightly exceeded the budget, but this is still down from 2019. Capital revenues from federal and state sources are under budget due to the timing of the projects. And we did actually see Fred Bus projected savings of $277,000 that they adopted after the adopted budget. Utilities fund, water and sewer fees exceeded the budget in part to increase demand from the teleworking communities, and availability and pro rata fees exceeded the budget. Well-managed operating expenditures created a savings of approximately $3.2 million, and capital projects were slower than anticipated in the budget. The school operating funds, the school did present to their school board, school staff presented to their school board at their last meeting. Their unaudited results, their overall revenues were over budget by about $3.3 million. Sales tax was a significant factor in that of 2.5, almost 2.6 million. Expenditure savings were realized in payroll costs, fuel, and utilities. The schools are anticipating a carry forward of about 4.8 million, or approximately 1.5%. Carry forward funds will be held in the general fund, the county's general fund balance in anticipation of use in the CIP or other one-time projects as appropriated in the future by the board. In summary, we have increases to general fund revenues available for capital projects and future projects of the board. All funds have positive results of operations, and we will be providing the board with options of using one-time funds with the adoption of the next CIP. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any of my colleagues have any questions for Ms. Light? No? Thank you very much. Mr. Presley?
That concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Okay, very good. All right, moving on to the approval of the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, please cast your votes. That motion carries 6-0 with 1 absent. Okay, and while we were doing that presentation, I did poll my board members, and because a lot of you guys are here for the CRT 1619 resolution, we're going to bump that up to the first item that we're going to act on for unfinished business, so we'll take that up next. Then it'll be the Ferry Farm Trail and then the ARPA resolution. So item number 13, which is consider adopting a resolution stating the board's position against Project 1619 critical race theory and student pronoun selection being taught or used in Stafford County Public Schools, proposed resolution R21-357. Mr. Snellings, you requested this, so I'm going to defer to you for first comments.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I'm the person to blame, but I want to explain why I brought this to the board. Earlier in the school year, I started getting emails, telephone calls from parents, very concerned about some things that were going on in the schools. They asked me specifically, are schools teaching CRT? I said, I don't know. Are they teaching the critical race theory? I don't know. Or I'm sorry, the 1619 project? I don't know. Are they requiring students to give their pronouns? Again, I didn't know. So I sent an email to some members of the school board and asked those questions because I wanted to answer for my constituents. I got no answer. I got no email back, I got no phone call, I got nothing. I felt obligated to my constituents to bring it before this board. And that's where we are today. Dr. Jones came over 2 weeks ago. We had provided him with questions. He answered those questions. And I asked that a resolution be put in place, and that resolution would state simply that we are basically against the teaching of CRT. And I think everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say CRT. It's pitting one race against another, and that's racism, pure and simple. That's what I'm talking about. I think everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say the 1619 project, written by a New York Times reporter. And even the left-wing historians say it's no good. It's a theory. But the confusions come in on the pronouns. Nothing in this resolution, and I'll talk about it a little bit more once the motion is made, would ask the school board to ban students using pronouns. Nothing. But I'll talk about that in just a second. But that's how we got this far. And I hope to be able to clear some things up once a motion is made. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open the floor for a motion, and then we can open it up for discussion. Would anybody like to make a motion?
Well, Madam Chairman, since I got this started, I guess I better see it through to the finish. I make a motion for approval of R21-357.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded. So we have a motion on the floor to approve R21-357 by Supervisor Snellings with a second by Supervisor Dudenheffer. Go ahead, Mr. Snellings.
Well, as I sat here this afternoon, I kind of asked myself, did anyone read this resolution? You know, when I was a kid, we had a game. We'd sit in a circle, and we'd whisper something in a person's ear and ask him to pass it along. And invariably, by the time it got back to us, it was all wrong. And that's what we have here, except you didn't sit in a circle. You went on Facebook, the preferred news media for 80% of our population. And on Facebook, people took things out of it and kind of made it what they want. You know, I heard somebody say, well, you can't defund our schools. And nothing in this says we're going to defund schools. Not one thing. Let me tell you what it says, if you haven't read it. Whereas the board has received numerous communications from parents, students, and concerned constituents regarding the teaching of the 1619 project and critical race theory and related principles in Stafford County Public Schools. And whereas the board has received numerous communications from parents, students, and concerned constituents regarding students from Stafford County Public Schools being required to identify their chosen pronoun. Being required. State law says that you cannot ask a student their pronoun. You cannot require them to give it. It says if the student or the student's parent goes to the teacher and asks that a preferred pronoun be applied to them or their child, the teacher must do that. Fine. No problem. No problem at all. What this says, they can't be required. I had one lady call me up so upset because her son, who had just entered high school, was asked, what is your pronoun? He didn't know. He knows what she's talking about. He felt bullied. So this does not eliminate anything. It just follows state law. Whereas the board does not support the teaching of the 1619 project and CRT and related principles of Stafford County schools, nor does it support the students of Stafford County Public Schools being requested to identify their chosen pronouns. Whereas the board does not support the school board expending any funds to teach or further the 1619 project or CRT or related principles or student pronoun selections in Stafford County Public Schools. And whereas the board will stringently review all appropriation requests from the school board to ensure funding is not dedicated to practices specifically denounced in this resolution. Funding that goes to those different things. If the school board decides to do what Fairfax County did and bring in a guy that is, quote, an expert in CRT, and I don't have his name in front of me, but he's way out there, and pay him $20,000, if our school board decides to do that, guess what? This resolution will give us the authority to deduct that $20,000 at the next budget time. It does not give us the authority to reduce school funding. We can't do that by law. We have to provide funding to our school system. But we can reduce funding for any project that follows that promotes CRT or promotes Project 1619 or requires students to give their pronoun. That's what this resolution is all about. Very simple, to the point. It follows state law right down the line. Right down the line. Now, there's one other state law I want to quote. Did a lot of research on this. It's a Code of Virginia, I-240.1, called Rights of Parents. It's very short. A parent has a fundamental right to make decisions concerning the upbringing, education, and care of the parent's child. A fundamental right. That was passed in 2013. Now, I'm not sure how everybody got upset about this thing. I mean, we had the meeting with Dr. Jones. Dr. Jones says we're not doing it. Fine. If you're not doing it, you're not doing it. What this resolution is saying, we don't want you to do it in the future. The day after that meeting, we got calls from Josh Cole's office, Senator Sorvel's office. There is a newsletter online called, I think it's called Blue Virginia. Go read that one. I've personally been called a racist because of this, and I resent it. This is nothing more than following state law and nothing more than protecting our children. So with that, Madam Chairman, I'll yield back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Snellings. Mr. Dudenheffer, you seconded. Would you like to go next?
Sure. As I said, I wasn't here last week, and I didn't have internet connection, so I couldn't even watch it on television. I was given an opportunity to call in graciously by the board, but there was no way I could do it. But I have had a chance to watch the interim superintendent's remarks from that meeting. We record all of it. It's all online anytime you want to go look. And to be honest with you, I was disappointed in his demeanor, his condescending attitude, as if I dare you to question me or my school board or my teachers or whatever in any of these specific areas. The thing that concerns me the most at this point is the erosion of the ability for parents to make decisions for their children. A teacher or a superintendent says that they decide what a child should be taught, and that you shouldn't care or protest if that is something that goes against your religion or goes against your fundamental culture or whatever. And I find that to be highly, highly, highly offensive. We have very little tools that we can use with the schools, and we've had disagreements with them over many years over a lot of issues. And while I actually came in today thinking that one of my positions, and I've been solid on it for, this is my 10th year on the board, is I wasn't elected to run the schools. The school board was elected to run the schools. But I can't tell you how many times over my 10 years on this board how disappointed I've been in their lack of leadership, of getting involved and being able to deal with controversial issues that are out there. So I'm going to support the resolution. When the time comes next year to implement it, I won't be here. You'll have other people who can do that. Always remember that elections have consequences. I'm not telling you who to vote for or whatever, but I can tell you that when you only get 30% of the votes showing up, there's a small number of people deciding who can do what. But you need to look at your school board reps and what their positions are in this and in many other particular cases. We should be in the business of teaching our children mathematics, English, literature, science, all those physical education, things like that. We shouldn't be distracting them. As the superintendent said, this is a distraction. It's a distraction because they won't deal with it and address it in an open manner with parents. So I'm going to support this. I've had many conversations with my school board rep who definitely opposes this. I hope she understands that I didn't make this decision lightly, but I hope that in the future they will take into account more what the parents have to say about the education of their children. We may have to worry about the particulars of a small minority of people, and I believe we should do that. But we also have a lot of people out there whose voices are not being heard because they're not in a minority, and we need to avoid that at all costs. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
You want to?
Do you want to
Yeah,
go?
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for yielding over to me, Ms. Baumke. I had, if you guys saw the interview, our discussion that we had with Dr. Jones, and one of the things that I was concerned with was the comment or the concern that what's being taught in the teachers is not controlled or is not accountable. And we all agreed that, yes, we are accountable to you, the constituents. And that is one of the reasons why I support this resolution, because this is the only tool that we have to be able to help hold that accountability, to recognize where your tax dollars are being spent. And that was what was brought to us, and that's our responsibility. So I just want to let you know that I absolutely support this resolution, and the words that are in it do meet that requirement for accountability down into the classroom.
Mr. Cohen.
Yes, and was there a change in the resolution in one word or so?
So just to point out, I think there was a mistake in the draft resolution said requested to identify their chosen pronouns, and I think just polling the board briefly, it was required was really the intent of Supervisor Snelling's, because it was brought forward that some students were being required to fill out Google Forms or being asked in public and kind of putting them on the spot. So required was the one.
And that's in the part 2, the second, be it further resolved?
Yeah, so there's
Yes,
two
ma'am.
requireds in the the third paragraph, whereas, and then in the very last
Okay.
paragraph, in the very last sentence.
Thank you, ma'am. I of course, clearly come from this from a different perspective. To tag on to what Mr. Snelling said with the history, he was asked in April and did not receive any word from his school board member. So after 4 or 5 weeks of nothing, I reached out to my school board member, and Ms. Randall got back to me ASAP, which is what she does, and got me back the information. But by the time I came to talk to him as to what was actually going on with the school system, he had received, and other board members had received, many more communications from parents and entities with concerns. So I went back to my school board member and said, you all need to get in front of this, because this is a maelstrom that's coming across the country, coming across the Commonwealth. It's clearly coming across Stafford, and you need to be proactive. That being said, that was May. Nothing happened until the end of August, when there was a statement read by the acting superintendent, and it was very narrow in scope. And it said, because I have no life, so I watch school board meetings as well as our meetings and planning meetings. It said that CRT is not being taught in social studies. But by then, we had people come before us and put in other venues issues in other disciplines, not just social studies. So that was not addressing the concern because of its very narrow focus. Secondly, it did not give any type of forum for parents or a methodology for parents to communicate concerns if they didn't feel comfortable going to the teacher or to the building administrator. And that's a problem. And so that's how we got it before us. Because in that many-month time period, the school board didn't bring it forward, and the acting superintendent just gave a statement that was sort of vapid. Yes, CRT is a very complex issue. It is dealt on the college level and university level and the law school level. It's also very divisive. Somebody I work with who is more inclined to believe it would not think of teaching it because it is so nuanced. He doesn't feel he knows enough to teach it accurately. And so certainly, and having taught on the university level and K through 8 through 12, there are certain topics you cannot discuss on the K-8 level and 8 to 12. And there's certain things you cannot do, or even how you present it on the university level is completely different than what you do on the other levels. It was brought up by some people, so I added it, so I apologize. Yes, in some disciplines, most notably the social sciences like government or poli-sci, theories are taught as theories, like the theories of democracy, elite, pluralist, hyper-pluralist, etc. And there's open debate and discussion, Federalist papers, anti-Federalist papers. Other disciplines, theories are taught as facts. And there we have the problem, because if it's being taught as a fact, that's not the same as it being taught as a theory. And the higher level haven't figured out how they want to cover that, so it's hard to think that a third grade teacher or a middle school teacher or a high school teacher can do that if the colleges haven't figured out. Now let's be clear, there are certain things under the CRT umbrella that are taught as part of curriculums in social studies classes and government classes. And there are legitimate topics to be covered. Jim Crow laws, the Voting Act, Fourth Amendment, the policy created by Mayor Bloomberg of stop and frisk. Those things can be covered, and the teacher is not talking about CRT. So there are certain elements that are certainly fair game to discuss, and if a parent has a question, thanks to coming to our board, because Mr. Snelling put it on our agenda, the superintendent finally said, if you have a concern and you don't feel comfortable on these levels, come to me. And so, but the perception is out there that the CRT is being taught in the schools. And unfortunately, in our society, perception is reality. On the element about the pronouns, I think the comments made by people today about students feeling awkward about being outed were superb. The educators that I know and work with work to create environments that are respectful and understanding. And that is how you create a good working relationship and environment. And if you build that relationship with your students, they feel better, more comfortable, and they come to you with these issues. Before this was fashionable and more known, way back when I was younger and teaching, people felt comfortable in my classroom with many different topics. That is what an educator does. And so the language in this resolution does not violate state law. And I had individuals, and I read on the wonderful Facebook, people claiming that it violated state law. No, many of us fought really strongly to make sure that it was clear we are not violating state law. We can't do that. There's a system of government. We are bound by the Virginia Constitution. And so, with that said, I will support this resolution for A, because it follows state law. B, because the members of the community have a perception that something is being taught in the school. And all we have had from the superintendent is one sentence about one discipline. And some school board members have said it's not being taught, and that's it. But the community needed to know that. And if bringing this forward brought it to your attention that A, it's not being taught in our school system, and B, if you think it is, there is now a mechanism to handle it, that has been a blessing. And the third reason I'm doing this is to support our educators. This school year has been tremendously difficult. You have learning losses of different levels for students that the teachers have to deal with. They are teaching hybrid when they thought they'd never see that again because of students who are quarantined. They are teaching multiple lessons. Some teachers are teaching so many classes they have no planning period during a day. So they are doing more work, and yet they are having less time to do it in. On top of that, they have students who are late to work, late to school, which is their work, through no fault of the students and no fault of the bus drivers and no fault of the educators, but they have to deal with that. And then they had almost a full week of the angst by students and parents and themselves and their family members of a proposed schedule change that they never even gave any input into. On top of all of that stress, they were having parents looking over their shoulders, wondering if every single thing they did was somehow wrapped into CRT. I would have thought the school board might have mentioned that in their comments. I would have thought maybe the superintendent would have thought of the pressure they are putting on these employees. But they didn't. So in lack of them caring enough about the educators, somebody has to. And in my opinion, this resolution ensures that we are not putting students in an awkward situation, but we treat them with the respect they deserve, and we treat our educators with the respect and let them do their job, which is to bring these students up into the level they should be that COVID has knocked them away from.
Okay, anyone else? Go ahead, Ms. Bomke.
Okay, I just wanted to say that 2 weeks ago, when Dr. Jones, the interim superintendent, came to address our board, as Supervisor Snelling said, we did provide him the questions in advance so he could be prepared. And as Mr. Snelling said earlier, he pretty much stayed on script and answered our questions. However, when we got to the question of CRT, he said CRT is absolutely not in our schools. It was under Crystal Vanucci's comments, our chair, she said, well, you must not be aware when you go to the Equity and Accountability website, which we have no problem with, if you drill down and do 2 or 3 clicks, it takes you to the National Equity Project on CRT. The next day, that was removed from the website. So the interim superintendent did not even know that that was a part of their website. That is a concern that I had. So I think most of my colleagues have already said it all. In the essence of time, I will yield my comments to the chair.
All right, thank you, everyone. I'm not into beating a dead horse here. I think I agree with everything that all of my colleagues have said up here today. And I want to remind the public, we are elected to serve you, to serve the students, to serve the parents. And when parents feel that they are not getting the answers from some of their other elected officials in the school side of things, they turn to us and they ask us to look at things because ultimately we are the funding body and the funding mechanism. And it is our responsibility to make sure that your tax dollars are going toward things that you agree with. So I think that was one of the principles that I wanted to make sure that we looked into this and we gave parents a way to bring their concerns forward, as Mr. Cohen said. Now, there is a way that parents can bring these concerns forward. Parents are aware of the CRT issues, and they are able to have a path to bring that to the educators and bring that to the superintendent. And if that doesn't work, then obviously they can bring it to the Board of Supervisors. And as Mr. Snelling said, if they were to hire consultants that we didn't agree with, we would now have the ability to take that away from the budget and future budget years. So this resolution doesn't do anything more than that. I know there was a lot of misnomers all over the internet on what this resolution really does. It's not defunding teachers' salaries. It's not doing any of that. So I just wanted to reiterate that. So with that, I'm going to close my comments. And Mr. Snellings, it's been a few minutes since the original motion, so would you mind repeating the motion for the public's transparency?
Yes, ma'am. Just a couple of changes. First of all, let me apologize to those 315 people that sent me emails in the last 4 days. I didn't answer them all. But I'll try to before it's over. We need to make two changes to the resolution. The first change is in paragraph 2, where it says Stafford County Public Schools being requested. We're going to change that to required. And then on the back page, the last sentence, the same thing, being requested to being required.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Snellings. Mr. Judenhofer, are you okay with those amendments? Okay, very well. All right, no further discussion. Please go ahead and cast your votes. Tally the votes. That motion carries 6-0 with 1 absent. Okay, I have been requested by my colleagues to take a 10-minute recess, and then we will reconvene at around 5:40 to take up we're going to do the Ferry Farm Trail first. Thank you. Patience, especially all the Belmont Ferry Farm folks. This is your second long meeting, so we appreciate you hanging in there with us. Okay, so we are going to now take up item number 12, capital projects and transportation, which is a multitude of projects that I'm not going to go through. For this, we're going to recognize Mr. Alex Oziak, and he's going to discuss the Belmont Ferry Farm Trail first, so we can make other decisions.
All right, good afternoon, Madam Chairman, members of the board. Alex Oziak, Transportation Program Manager, and I'm here to discuss the Belmont Ferry Farm Trail Phase 6, as well as final project applications for VDOT's FY23 through 24 Transportation's Alternative Funding. First, I'll go over some background on the Transportation Alternatives Program before going to more detail on Belmont Ferry Farm and the other projects. Just to refresh your memory, back in mid-May, VDOT did issue a call for projects on their smart portal, so we could begin submitting pre-applications for these projects seeking FY23 through 24 Transportation Alternatives funding. Staff submitted project pre-applications, and VDOT has already gone through and completed their review of those projects and screened in eligible projects to move forward through to final application. Final applications are due October 1st and will require a resolution of support establishing funding priorities as well as evidence of public meetings. Here for a quick summary of the Transportation Alternatives Program. This funding allows for up to 80% reimbursement of the project cost, with the locality responsible for the other 20%. Currently, a locality may apply for a maximum of $2 million per project application over the 2 fiscal years. However, the District Commonwealth Transportation Board members are only provided $2 million to allocate across their entire district. So here with us with the Fredericksburg District, we'd also be competing against 13 other localities. For a quick summary, we did submit 7 pre-applications for the Transportation Alternatives Funding. VDOT screened in 6 of those projects as eligible for funding, and due to the limited funding that is available for the program, VDOT has asked that we kind of limit our applications to just 2 projects. And then as I mentioned earlier, project applications are due October 1st. Staff has reviewed the screened-in projects and recommends the Belmont Ferry Farm Trail Phase 6, the Salisbury Drive Sidewalk, and the Forston Woods Drive Sidewalk project to be considered as the county's top priorities. Brief summary of these 3 projects is listed on this slide. The Belmont Ferry Farm Trail is currently an active project. Salisbury Drive Sidewalk is included in our CIP, and the Forston Woods Sidewalk, after reviewing our different list, had served the greatest number of pedestrians compared to the other projects and would connect with 2 existing Fred transit stops. So here I'll kind of go over a little bit of the Belmont Ferry Farm Trail Phase 6. Route options for this trail were discussed at the July 6th and September 7th Infrastructure Committee with no formal recommendation from the committee. Options were presented again to the full board on September 7th, but action on the item was deferred. VDOT has requested that construction on this phase of the trail be started before the end of 2022, or else the county risks VDOT deallocating funding that's currently applied on the project. Should the board decide to move forward with the trail project down Old Dairy Lane, staff will proceed with submitting the funding applications. However, if the board decides to cancel the project, nothing would prohibit the county from seeking project funding for this project in the future. This slide here provides just kind of a brief history of the project. The Belmont Ferry Farm Trail system first came to fruition back in 1999 when VDOT approved the initial funding for the projects. Fast forward a decade now to 2011, and the construction was already underway for the first 2 phases of this 6-phase trail system. By 2018, initial segments of the trail from Belmont to Pratt Park had been constructed, and construction wrapped up on Phase 4 of the project between Pratt Park and Chatham Bridge just last year, or the year before. More recently, staff has been working with our consultant engineers on the final phase of the project to extend it all the way to the intersection with Ferry Farm and Ferry Road. Since the project's inception, the final phase of the trails consisted of numerous potential alignments. Many of these alignments were eliminated for a variety of different reasons, from environmental impacts to refusal by the Ferry Farm Foundation to allow the trail on their property. In order to meet VDOT requirements, staff has developed 2 options for this project to continue. The first option is to construct the trail from Chatham Bridge to the CSX underpass, utilizing the Old Dairy Lane alignment and existing VDOT right-of-way. However, local property owners are not in favor of this alignment due to potential impacts to their property. Staff has explored other routing options, but these options significantly increase project cost, require additional difficulty property acquisitions, and exceed the time constraints that are being imposed by VDOT. The estimated cost for this alignment that would go down Old Dairy Lane, continue to Cool Springs Drive, and down the east side of Route 3 is approximately $3.5 million. The second option for the trail is to just go ahead and cancel the final phase of the Belmont Ferry Farm Trail network and instead terminate the trail at the connection with the new Chatham Bridge. This would require the county to repay the federal reimbursement we've received thus far, which totals approximately $130,000. Again, canceling the project would not prohibit the county from applying for funding at a future date. These next 2 slides here show the trail alignment option currently in yellow, which would utilize the Old Dairy Lane right-of-way and continue to the CSX railway crossing on Naomi Road, and then follow the green segment there down Naomi, connecting up with the intersection at Cool Springs Drive and Route 3. Right here at the Cool Springs Drive, the trail will now cross Route 3 and continue along the east side of Route 3 in front of the Ferry Farm Shopping Center, which is actually shown in red here, not the purple as indicated on the slide. And with that, I'll kind of take a pause here to see if there's any questions about the Belmont Ferry Farm Trail.
Any questions? No.
All right.
So maybe yes.
So
Ms. Bomke.
we're not really voting today. Well, no, go ahead and I'll ask.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right, and so these next, excuse me, let me go on to my next notes. So moving along, this slide here summarizes the Salisbury Drive project, which construct approximately 900 feet of 5-foot wide sidewalk along Salisbury Drive. This would connect with the existing sidewalk at the intersection of Garrisonville Road and extend that sidewalk all the way down to the VDOT commuter lot off Mine Road. Current estimated cost for this project is about 1.5, almost $1.6 million. And then our third project here is the Forest and Woods Drive sidewalk. This project would construct approximately 500 feet of sidewalk along the south side of Forest and Woods Drive from the intersection with Sousa Drive to connect with the Fred Transit Stop. It's right there at the Weiss Market, and then continue all the way to Route 1, crossing Route 1, and then eventually connecting up with the existing sidewalk network in front of the Wawa, as well as the existing Fred bus transit stop there. Current estimated cost for this project is $1.34 million. So depending upon the will of the board tonight, staff has drafted 2 resolutions pertaining to the transportation alternatives funding applications. Should the board continue to decide with the Belmont Ferry Farm Trail, we have assembled a resolution R21-320, which sets the Belmont Ferry Farm Trail as our #1 priority and the Salisbury Drive sidewalk as the 2nd priority. Now, should the board decide to discontinue the Belmont Ferry Farm Trail project, staff has assembled resolution R21-330, which sets the Salisbury Drive sidewalk as our #1 priority, and the Forest and Woods sidewalk is the #2. And with that, I'll go ahead and open the floor to questions.
Okay, I'll defer to Mr. Cohen first, since this really is in his district, but
I don't have
please
any
be brief.
questions,
Okay.
so if we can see if Ms. Baumke has a question, then I can make a
Go ahead, Ms.
motion.
Baumke.
So are we looking at any other options besides Dairy Lane and Naomi? Or is our option either tonight to vote on Dairy Lane or no trail?
I'll kind of go back to the graphic here, but right now we're looking at either voting on continuing down Dairy Lane or discontinuing the project altogether. As I mentioned, we did look at some alternatives. Certainly taking the path down Naomi Road is shown here on green on the slide. We've run into issues there where, again, you have multiple crossings of Naomi Road. To get across there, there's also a pending development in front of, along Naomi Road, which our trail would impact that. I know the developer has proffered to construct a portion of that trail. However, in our discussions with the developer, that project is at least 3 to 5 years down the line, and we just can't wait that long, or else, VDOT will rescind the funding that's currently available on the project.
Okay, that was my question, as I wanted to make sure that information was out in the public, that really Naomi is not in consideration, even though he proffered it to take place right now. Okay.
Yeah, just due to the timing of it, yes.
Thank you. Okay.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very
thank
much.
you.
Okay, this isn't a public hearing, so I guess I'm going to bring it back to Mr. Cohen. This is in your district.
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve R21-330, and if it's seconded, I'll explain.
Second.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Cohen?
Okay, so as was pointed out, this would stop the trail right now at the Chatham Bridge. The county would have to return the $130,000 rather than pay $775,000. It would allow some of that $775,000 to go towards other projects. And there's also one item, for example, VDOT could take the money even if we went with Dairy Lane, because they've been wanting to do this wrapped up for 2 years now. So we could say tonight it's going down Dairy Lane, and VDOT could say tomorrow, too bad, we're taking the money. So lastly, this would give time for other options. There is going to be a trail down there. It's just an option of which way. And one of the things that came is we've been talking about the high-speed rail with the bike trail, but there's also Route 3. And if they do high-speed rail, most of the funding for that high-speed rail project is rebuilding bridges. They rebuild that bridge, they can put in a bike trail like they did at Chatham, and therefore the argument that many of us have been saying, you could just go straight up Route 3, could be thought of again. So there's other options, and I think we could use the money elsewhere.
I did tell him he had a time limit this time. Okay, Mr. Duden, or Mr. Snellings, you seconded. Do you have a comment?
I have no comment.
Okay, anybody else?
Yes, I have a comment.
Go ahead, Ms. Baumke.
So as you all know, I'm passionate about trails. I'm passionate about walkability. I've wanted this project for a long time. I understand the residents over in your area. I was hoping that we could, find a happy median where, because I understand the security for your children in the tot lot or the playground area. I was hoping we could come up with a fence that would provide you all the safety that you wanted. You know, I know it's close to Miss Watson's property. So, you know, my board knows that I'm going to support this. I know this motion isn't going to pass, but you know, I have to say I am tired of spending my tax dollars in the city of Fredericksburg, as, you know, previous speakers have said. We've also received emails from people. You know, trails bring tourists here. Trails are great. A number of you, unfortunately, in northern Stafford don't have a trail like what we have down in South Stafford. And all of our trails are phenomenal. So I was hoping we could come up with a way to expand this trail in a way that, something that could work for everybody. But it seems like that's not the will of the board. So I'll probably be the only person voting against. And I'm just going on record because I love walkability. I love the trails. If I noticed anything during COVID, people discovered the outdoors like they never have before. And I encourage some of you that live in the northern part of the county to come down and walk the trails in South Stafford. And even when the Chatham Bridge is open, we fought really hard to get that pedestrian lane on that bridge. Supervisor Thomas did when we worked with VDOT. And it's going to be really fun to ride your bike or walk across the Chatham Bridge in a safe manner to the other trails that are in the city. So I appreciate everybody that's come out and spoke in favor and even against the trails. But again, I'll be supporting it just because I love trails. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Ms. Shelton?
Lamb.
Lamb,
That's
I'm
okay.
so
That's
sorry.
all right. That's fine. As you know, I talked about this last time because I was really concerned about the bike ped crossing over CSX or over the railroad tracks, and that gave me some pretty darn significant pause, and my apology again to Mr. Cohen, but the deferment allowed us to have some conversations with different agencies as well as with our own staff on certain options. And I, too, like Ms. Bomke, absolutely support the need for walkability in Stafford County. Those people in the Quiet District know that's a common conversation we have on the roundtables is what can we do to get those? What options can we have? I'm pleased, actually, to see that a quiet ended up to be one of the options, but I wanted you to know that is not my reason for changing. My reason for changing is because I personally kept going on the fence. I felt like there's great arguments for, great arguments against. It's not in my district. And so I feel compelled to honor my fellow supervisor and his constituents and vote with him because that's his area. If I felt very strongly differently, of course I'd vote differently, but that's, honestly, I've just been on the board, and I think the only thing I can do is do the right thing by Mr. Cohen. So, thanks.
All right, any other comments? All right, seeing none, we have a motion to approve R21-330, correct? Yes. All right, and we have a second. Please go ahead and cast your votes. Tally the votes. That motion carries 5-1 with 1 absent. Okay, now moving on to item 11 on the agenda, which is a resolution to appropriate American Rescue Plan Act grant funds in FY 2021 to support the rehiring of furloughed staff by replacing seasonal staff salaries. For that, we're going to recognize Miss Andrea Light, and if you wouldn't mind just moving out quietly so we can continue on, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank
Go
you,
ahead,
Madam
Ms. Light.
Chair, members of the board. Stafford County will be receiving $29.7 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds in 2 tranches, with $14 million already being received and the remaining $14 million received at the end of next May. The board is being asked to consider the appropriation of $142,935 of ARPA funds to use for salaries of rehired PRCF employees furloughed during the pandemic. Through prior work sessions, staff identified a proposal of almost $5 million over the 4-year period to reimburse the general fund for these furloughed employees. These funds will be held in fund balance for further use of one-time funding for future capital projects. If the board approves, there will be $9.3 million of the first tranche remaining. I'm happy to answer any questions.
That was my favorite presentation today so far. Any further questions? Okay, seeing none. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
All right, do I have a second? Second. Any further discussion? Okay, go ahead and cast your votes. Ms. Lant, oh, there we go. Tally the votes. That motion carries 6-0 with 1 absent. All right, plugging right along. Number 14, just to reiterate, was moved. We're going to put that on when all 7 board members can be present at one of the next board meetings. Item number 15 is capital project transportation. Consider condemnation and exercise of quick take powers in connection with the Courthouse Road and Route 1 intersection improvement, known as the Joe Knight or Jomo Family Trust. Mr. Oziak.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. So yes, here again to continue the discussion regarding the property condemnation associated with the Route 1 and Courthouse Road intersection improvement project. First, I'll go ahead and give back a little background on the project. This will widen Route 1 between Bells Hill and Hope Road intersection and the Courthouse Road intersection to provide dedicated left turn lanes at those intersections. These new turn lanes will reduce the congestion and delay experienced at these 2 intersections and improve roadway safety. The county contracted with Bowman Consulting back in 2014 for the project design and right-of-way acquisition services. The county will need to acquire the necessary property rights before utility relocation and construction can begin. Utility relocation is currently scheduled to start this fall, with roadway construction anticipated to start in summer of 2022 and be completed by the end of 2023. A total of 30 parcels are impacted by the project, and the county has been able to reach agreement with 22 of those parcels. The board has previously authorized condemnation on 5 of those parcels back in June of 2019 and another 3 parcels back on September 7th of this year. We are currently engaged with outside counsel to try and reach settlements with those owners, and now there's just 1 property remaining to be acquired, and negotiations have thus far reached an impasse on that property. Here's a slide just kind of showing a history of the contact with impacted landowners. Starting back in December 2014, when notifications about the initial surveying were sent out to all the way to the formal public hearing that was held back in June of 2016. Initial offer letters for property acquisitions were presented to all landowners by the fall of 2018, and the county has been in negotiations ever since. So the parcel under consideration for condemnation this evening is tax map parcel 30-44C, can be shown in the graphic here. This parcel is located on the southwest corner of Route 1 and Courthouse Road and is the site of Acquire Realty. The county needs to acquire 1,179 square feet of fee simple right-of-way and another 1,440 square feet of temporary construction easement. The initial offer letter was presented to the landowner back in November of 2018, and negotiations have been underway ever since. We have met with the landowner numerous times over the last 2+ years in an attempt to try to reach an agreement. The landowner did submit a counteroffer, but that counteroffer was rejected by the county as it far exceeded the current tax assessment of the entire property. The landowner has since indicated support for the condemnation since our offers are so far apart. Back when this item was presented at the September 7th board meeting, there were some questions from the board about impacts to parking and signage on the parcel. Currently, there are 13 parking spaces provided on the parcel, which is actually below the minimum required by current county zoning regulations. And the majority of those existing spaces are actually smaller than the minimum size required by zoning. Our engineer, Bowman Consulting, has developed the parking layout shown here, which would provide 13 parking spaces that meet county zoning regulations, matching their current number of spaces today. This diagram kind of shows the layout of the replacement parking that would be included as part of the construction of the project. There are also currently 2 signage structures on the property. One is a post-mounted sign along the frontage of Route 1, and the other is a large billboard-type sign located on the southern side of the property. The post-mounted sign will be impacted by the project, as it is currently located in an area of the planned sidewalk. However, our engineer has identified an area behind the sidewalk where this sign could be relocated to. As for the billboard-type sign, this is also being impacted by our construction, as a portion of the sign foundation falls within the VDOT right-of-way and the very edge of the sidewalk as well. We did look at these, and are part of our bona fide offer to the landowner. We are compensating them a total of $9,800 for both of those signs. So in summary, this condemnation is necessary in order to acquire the property rights necessary to begin utility relocation and construction. Staff recommends approval of R21-227, which would authorize the condemnation for tax map parcel 30-44C. A certified letter will be sent to the landowner informing them of the condemnation action at least 30 days prior to filing the certificate with the court. And although we are recommending condemnation in order to keep the project on schedule, we will still continue to work with the landowner to try to reach an amicable settlement. And with that, are there any questions?
Any questions? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Snellings, this is in your district. What would you like to do this
Madam
time?
Chairman, I move for approval of R21-227.
Okay, do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further comment? Okay, seeing none, please cast your votes. That motion carries 6-0 with 1 absent. Okay, now moving on to new business, budget and management, a resolution to amend the capital improvement program development policy. And for this, we recognize Ms. Light.
Again, thank you, Madam Chair. Today, the board is being asked to consider an update to the CIP policy. We have provided this CIP policy to the FAB in both June and August. The FAB directed the changes of one member of the Technical Review Committee to be a school board member and one member to be a public safety member. The FAB also asked us to bring this before the full board to look at the 3R projects scoring matrix. Computer, please. So I'm going to try to make this as big as possible, if that's possible. Within the ranking criteria, there are 5 different elements. Increase infrastructure capacity, public health and or safety, preserve or extend the life of existing assets, major impacts on projects or programs, and if this has been supported by studies. So that's what you see in the upper left blue box there. In the red box are the highest ranking projects by fiscal year. Based on this ranking criteria, we can change the ranking criteria and see how that might impact those. And then below this, which is a lot of information, is all of the projects for every year. So I'll ask if there's any changes the board would like to see to any of the 3R project scoring.
Ms. Shelton. Lamb, sorry.
That's okay. It's not important. Let's go back to, in our discussions, we asked for those percentages to be changed a couple of times and to see what that total impact was. If my notes are correct, and I'm sure yours will be better, but didn't we change or try to see the impact of changing the major impacts on other programs to, let's see, do you have it 10, up to 20%, and then decrease the preserve and extended life down to 15%? Wasn't that one of the adjustments we made? And then, by the way, for the board members that weren't there, the reason we were doing that is just to get a smell test on what would the impact of our decision matrix on, and how does that look like, and if it looked like what we thought was important. Yeah. Was this it? Were these a percentage?
I do believe that preserve the extended life is also at 20%, so that we could total to 100. But as I provided them to begin with, that's how the policy is as of now.
Correct. I understand.
So changing those like that would move the IT Cisco switches and firewalls to the first priority in fiscal year 22. As adopted, it was the sheriff in-car camera. There's no change to fiscal year 23. There's IT server replacement in 24 and 25, which changed then from the adopted CIP of fiber and Parks and Rec zero depth entry Lindsay pool. And the final year, fiscal year '26, there is no change.
Madam Chairman, I have some additional questions. My apologies. This looks more in line with one of our discussions that we've had about some of our security issues with IT. And so this kind of feels more like where those conversations have been had. Admittedly, some of those we have in a lot of subcommittee meetings, so people don't see them. So that feels better. Now, let me ask you about the IT server replacement in 24 and 25. Aren't those tied to the additional systems that we're expecting to implement at that time, as well as weren't they tied to the cameras? Wasn't that part of the IT justification, or did I misremember that?
The server replacement is an annual item that happens within IT. So they may be targeting specific projects or areas of service, but it's an annual replacement.
Any other questions? Mr. Cohen?
Real quickly, I'm not sure whether it's just because I'm dense, but did you say school board member or school staff member?
A school staff member.
Thank you. Because I thought, I just wanted to clarify.
You might
Thank
have
you.
said school board member.
Yes,
Oh,
I
my
think
goodness.
you did, and so
Well,
that's
it
just
was-
for the viewing 3 people.
Yes. Yes, it would be Mr. John Anderson, so thank you. And also, Madam Chair, if I may, if the board chooses it to look like this, then there's really no weighting of any one item over another because they're equally weighted here.
All right.
Madam Chairman, I like this. I'm not hearing any other comments from other board members. I think it gives a better picture, so I would be willing to make a motion with
It's new
this
business.
percentages.
It's new
with-
business.
Oh, I don't have to make a motion for next time?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so we just say, we give direction to staff to hold these percentages like this with even 20% across the board? Does anybody disagree with that? Well, you can say it's a great idea, Cindy, that works.
I don't think we need to give any direction. I think this is the proposal, and then the next meeting we'll vote on the new percentages that this depicts right here, right?
Correct.
Okay. So we don't need anything. You're going to come back October 5th.
Yes, that
Very
is
good.
correct, Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Last but not least, item 17, fire and
Madam Chairman?
rescue. Yes.
If we could go back to the previous item, seeing that there was consensus among the board, can we bring that item back to the board on consent on October 5th?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you, Ms. McClendon. Is everybody okay with that on consent?
Yeah. that'd be great.
Okay. All right, very good. We can bring it back as consent. That's fine. Okay. Thank you for saving us 10 minutes, Ms. McClendon, for National Night Out. Okay. Last but not least, fire and rescue. Consider adopting the emergency operations plan. Thank you very much for joining us and hanging out for so long.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you the Stafford County 2021 Emergency Operations Plan. I'm going to provide a brief overview of what this document is and why we're here today, and then provide a summary of changes that were made to the 2021 update. Virginia Code
Can you just state your name for the record?
I'm sorry. Yes, I'm Carrie Gonzalez with Fire and Rescue.
Very good.
The Virginia Code requires the county to prepare and keep current a plan to respond to disasters or large-scale emergencies, and it must be reviewed and approved every 4 years. The last plan was adopted by the board in 2017. So the purpose of the EOP is to establish a single comprehensive framework for the organization and management of emergencies. It incorporates all county departments so that everyone has a common understanding of and is able to implement these incident management principles, ensuring unity of effort and collaboration. The EOP is applicable to a full range of situations and applies to all county departments and organizations which are part of or will serve in support of the county government. It utilizes a multidisciplinary approach, acknowledging that effective incident management requires the subject matter expertise and resources of a variety of county departments and community organizations. It can be utilized to address all hazards that cause an emergency situation, whether they're natural, technological, or human-caused. And the foundation of the EOP is based on the National Incident Management System construct, which was adopted by the board as the county standard for incident management in October of 2006. NIMS, as it is commonly referred to, is a core set of doctrine, concepts, principles, terminology, and organizational processes that enables effective, efficient, and collaborative incident management. So the EOP is a document that clearly outlines the concept of operations to manage emergencies. It sets forth lines of authority and organizational relationships and shows how all actions will be coordinated. It also assigns responsibility to departments and individuals for carrying out specific actions that exceed routine responsibility at projected times and places during an emergency. Additionally, key functions and tasks that may need to be addressed are identified. Examples of this include communications, public information, sheltering, hazardous materials response, and many others. So in 2021, the EOP reaffirms the assignment of departmental emergency support function responsibilities and acknowledges that it takes the entirety of the Stafford County government to plan, prepare for, respond to, and recover from emergencies. The EOP identifies general expectations as well as specific tasks that may be necessary. Identifying this information ahead of the emergency is important as it allows for additional planning and resource development by the responsible parties. Advanced planning also helps mitigate issues that are often encountered during an emergency and enables training for county staff and exercises to practice and validate these plans. Through these processes, relationships are established, allowing for effective coordination, collaboration, cooperation, and communication, which, as you've heard me say, is fundamental to emergency incident management. This 2021 update also updates the Emergency Operations Center procedures. The EOC serves as a centralized location for incident management. The EOP outlines the activation and notification processes and establishes the staffing requirements for the EOC utilizing the incident command system structure to organize and staff the required positions. This update also recognizes the importance of and assigns responsibility for maintaining continuity of government and continuity of operations. The COVID-19 pandemic is the most recent, probably the most significant, example of how a disaster can impact the functioning of the government. To mitigate these impacts, the EOP identifies lines of succession and assigns responsibility for continuity of operations planning. The Federal Emergency Management Agency and the Virginia Department of Emergency Management each provides guidance on emergency preparedness and response. The COP utilizes this guidance to ensure updated and current practices are incorporated into our emergency management program. For example, since the last EOP was written in 2017, FEMA, as a result of lessons learned from various disaster responses, most notably that historic hurricane season of 2017, they developed community lifelines as a means to frame incident information and to understand and communicate incident impacts in a meaningful way. Community lifelines are the most fundamental services that, when stabilized, enable all other aspects of society. For example, safety and security, health and medical, food, water, shelter, etc. When they are disrupted, intervention is required, and the community lifeline construct enables our leadership to prioritize the response efforts to stabilize them. The EOP also incorporates concepts from other lessons learned in emergency management best practices. Again, as an example, the COVID-19 pandemic has proven that the ability to work remotely and conduct government operations virtually may be necessary in some emergencies. As I've mentioned, coordination and collaboration is the key to effective incident management. The EOP aligns with and is consistent with other local, regional, state, and federal operations plans and emergency response frameworks, allowing for a common concept of operations across all levels of government. This also enables the seamless integration of outside resources using familiar incident management processes. And the EOP concept of operations is flexible for use in all emergency and allows for the expansion of the response as the incident scope dictates. And then lastly, the EOP includes updated demographics based on the most current U.S. Census data, as well as updated legal authorities, including new legislation effective since the last update. The content and the format of the EOP is based on emergency planning guidance set forth by FEMA and is organized around a basic plan, functional annexes, and appendices. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Does anybody have any questions? And remember that this is also on the agenda for new business. Any questions? Okay. Nope.
Madam Chair,
Oh, yep.
This does need to be declared time sensitive because
Gotcha.
it's a requirement of the state this gets approved before the end of the month.
Okay. Do we have a motion? Okay, so I have a motion on the
Second.
floor for making it time sensitive with a second from Ms. Lamb. Any further discussion? Seeing none, go ahead and cast your votes for time sensitivity. Tally those votes. Motion carries 6-0 with 1 absent. Now do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, thank you very much for your hard work. I know you condensed it, and it's a lot more work than what it looked like to us. So thank you very, very much. And you guys did a wonderful job handling the pandemic, the storms that we've had. So this plan is incredibly important to the community, so thank you.
Thank you. I
Don't want our quickness to go, to gloss over that. Okay, so motion and a second to approve. Go ahead and cast your votes. Motion carries 6-0 with 1 absent, and that concludes our new business. We are going to break for dinner and come back at 7 o'clock for our public hearings, item 18 on the agenda. Okay, good evening and welcome to this evening's session for the September 21st, 2021 Board of Supervisors meeting. If you'll please join me in standing. This evening, Supervisor Cohen is going to give the invocation and Supervisor Bomke is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Lord, in these trying and challenging times, please touch all our hearts and help us to do what is best for our families, community, and country. Be with our teammates, and in particular with Ms. Allen, who is recently recovering from surgery. We cannot wait to have her back with us. Be with our public safety personnel and our men and women in the military. Hold them and their families safe from harm. Please be with those who have been impacted by the disasters, natural and man-made. Give them comfort as they deal with these ordeals. Lord, we trust and we thank you for our families and our friends. We seek to do what is best for everyone, and in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Cohen and Supervisors Bomke. Okay, so now we are going to have the public presentations portion of this evening's meeting. So this is a time where if you're here to talk about anything other than the public hearings that were advertised this evening, you come up to the podium, you state your name, address, and the district that you reside. When the green light comes on, that starts your time at 3 minutes. The yellow light means you have 1 minute left, and when the red light comes on, please conclude your comments. Your time has expired. I do have some speaker cards, and I just want to remind everybody to address your comments to the board as a whole and not to individual supervisors. So the first speaker that I have is Brian Pesolano, and I'm sorry if I butchered that last name. It happens to me all the time.
I was hoping not to be first. I've never done this before.
Well, you have a pro right down there.
Yep, but you didn't bring any props, so.
No. So
Go
good
ahead.
evening. My name is Brian Pesolano. I live at 44 Burns Road in Hampton Oaks in the Garrisonville District. So in addition to being a resident, I'm also the president of the Fredericksburg Area Running Club, which includes many Stafford residents. So I wanted to discuss pedestrian safety. I run and cycle regularly through Hampton Oaks, Austin Ridge, Park Ridge, and Embry Mill. As you know, these areas are frequented for traffic flowing to cut through, and obviously it makes pedestrian safety a bit of an issue. We regularly see folks coming through our neighborhoods at extremely dangerous speeds, not to mention being distracted. Complaints regarding these issues usually result in the putting up of the electronic speed signs or the decoy sheriff's car, which in the end may stop somebody for about a block, but doesn't do anything lasting to make any changes for drivers' behaviors. In particular, one of the most dangerous issues is folks that pretty much just blow through stop signs and intersections. A move that I see frequently now is as people approach an intersection, they look for traffic, they don't see a car coming, they blow right through the stop sign, particularly when they're making right turns, and don't bother to even look to see if a pedestrian's there. I've had frequent near misses in situations like that while out running. The intersection of Austin Ridge Drive and Mine Road is by far one of the most dangerous. The newly installed light and button for pedestrians doesn't really do a whole lot because in particular, there's no indication that someone's actually crossing for traffic. And again, therefore, when they're doing that no stop blow through. It doesn't do a whole lot for safety. Just Monday, I approached the intersection wearing a very light lit vest, and a truck came from Austin Ridge to Mine Road, blew right through the crosswalk right in front of me, stopped only because he saw a car, and the whole time we're standing there, the gentleman never even realized I was there. And those are incidents that happen quite frequently in that area. Additionally, there's issues with the safety of the sidewalks themselves. The section of the sidewalk along Mine Road, where the retaining wall is, that retaining wall doesn't do much to stop dirt and mud. It creates slippery situations, people go into the street. Or in general, Embry Mill, their water runoff situation is not great during the winter months. Those sidewalks freeze and create a real dangerous situation. So real quick, what I'm hoping to get from this is to have actually targeted traffic enforcement in the area. No kidding out there, writing tickets in the problem spots, because those things make lasting impressions of folks. People remember when the sheriff's department is out there writing tickets, not when there's a speed sign.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right, Salome Cook. Salome, I apologize. Go ahead.
Salome Cook, 123 Elmwood Drive. I live in the Garrisonville district. Respecting pronouns is an act of suicide prevention, and preserving history is essential to our lives. Allow me to preface. The resolve of an act that directly calls into question the school board's own non-discriminatory policy is insensitive and unbecoming of itself. Claims of being a safe place, a place where people regardless of race, color, sex, gender identity, and sexual orientation are welcomed and respected, are plastered on websites and in classrooms throughout the district. The resolution aims to revoke funding and security set in place for not only LGBTQ+ students, but also people of color, to be able to do just that, feel safe, welcomed, and respected in their learning environments, to empower them. Please realize that the month of September, is National Suicide Prevention Month. Thus, it is also relevant to note that in a national study in 2019, it was found that LGBTQ+ youth are 5 times more likely to attempt suicide than their heterosexual peers. So it is not only important, but critical for LGBTQ+ students to share in a space which they are respected on the basis of their identities. So when it is said, it is not said lightly, that respecting pronouns is an act of suicide prevention. The board aims to take away the funding that would promote the respectful, safe, and welcoming learning environment it was beginning to foster. Regardless of stance, I implore you to take into account your own children, your siblings, nieces and nephews, your best friend, as the people you aim to harm in revoking the funding that directly promotes education and understanding among teachers and students. Take note that the history surrounding this very state is held within the education of 1619 in critical race theory. You've implemented classes based on Black history, yet you aren't allowing them to flourish. The lack of funding would mean Black history classes could no longer remain, as well as LGBTQ+ resources in the classroom. Funding is necessary not only to save young lives, but also to influence positive change in the community. It is very easy to say that it's just money, but it is the very thing that is upholding the systems that benefit the youth. We are taking backward steps in the safety of students, putting them at higher risk than they already are. When it has taken years for individuals here at Stafford to get the attention of schools to enact change in not only the treatment of LGBTQ+ students, but in the importance of Black people in the community and Black history. So before September draws to a close, I encourage you all to fight for long overdue and necessary change in order to make every space a safe space, and that in and of itself is suicide prevention.
Thank you. The next speaker, Jamie Opanishuk, and I'm sure I did not say that right.
No, you did.
I did?
You did. You did.
All
great.
right.
I misspelled my first name, so it wasn't going to be Jaime, but
okay.
So my name is Jamie Opanishuk, and I'm a Leland resident, and I'm here to speak about the VDOT Leland Road path. And I have a quick 5 points to hopefully make. Number 1, VDOT is promoting this plan as a VRE commuter project, and I believe on our path, it is not the VRE who are the commuters. It is the Leland residents and the students of Conway Elementary, 5th graders and under, including me and my 6-year-old daughter and about another 100 commuters that travel that path 2 times a day. I've lived in Leland for approximately 6 years. I'm on the east side of the road, and I've seen 2 VRE commuters that use our east side path successfully every day. So what I'm trying to say with that is I don't think the project justifies the commuters to the VRE. And this plan does not improve the safety for myself or my daughter as the true commuters. I'd like to kind of show this photo. This was from the Sheriff's Department Facebook webpage on 9/13 Facebook page, and I thought this was Leland Road, this accident, but it's actually Courthouse Road. And the reason why I wanted to show that is this was a distracted driver who hit the ditch instead of the fence and the trees. This is the same illustration that could be Leland Road. VDOT's proposal is to rip out this ditch, to take away our fencing, to take away our mature trees, and that leaves our most vulnerable population susceptible to accidents. This wouldn't be the same conclusion if they are successful with this project. Leland Road is very dangerous. My daughter and I cross it every day. This project does not address a sidewalk from my side of the neighborhood on Perth Drive over to Walnut Farms. So that's my other concern, that this does not improve the safety of the true commuters. Bikers to the VRE. I don't know any biker that wants to dodge my 6-year-old in training wheels on a bike, but they want to get there. They want to get to the VRE to get on the train. And so this could all be solved, not to be so nonchalant about it, but we have 15 feet of roadway that is a turn lane. This could be solved by 2 cans of spray paint and a VDOT crew of 3 days, not $2.6 million for possibly 10 people that are going to the VRE. So that's my third point, that this is wasteful spending. I've also heard that VDOT says they're going to need additional funding for the redesign, and I asked the board to push back on that. Every project should have a slush fund, and that's my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Gina McVicker, and then the last speaker that I have is Jeff Adams, and then, of course, anybody in the audience is welcome to come speak. Go ahead.
Hi, Gina McVicker. I'm at 7 Rixey Court in Leland Station, the Falmouth District. I just want to remind you all that there's an upcoming opportunity for you to review and vote on a redesign of VDOT's bike path along Leland Road. We're a community of 775 taxpayers in Stafford County, and if the intention of the board is to advocate for residents in your district when there's a topic like this and you're hearing so much about it and so much against it, it really doesn't make sense to move forward when there's going to be so many people upset over it. We've had many opportunities to share our concerns over this project at HOA meetings, town halls, and these board meetings. And there's no one speaking up in favor of VDOT's current plan to widen our path to 10 feet and remove over 400 trees and landscaping. You just heard Jamie offer a proposed alternative design. We have many other residents in Leland Station that are proposing alternative design solutions to VDOT. So I believe with the help of our community in partnership with VDOT and the board, we can come up with a better plan for this project. But that will likely require funding to revisit the project design. So I just ask you to please support a redesign of the current plan that eliminates the negative impact on Leland Station. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we've all been waiting for this one. Mr. Adams.
It's okay to laugh.
Oh, I intend to.
Jeff Adams, 449 Kellogg Mill Road, Mr. Snelling's district. The reason I'm here, 2 weeks ago, you had a man speak from Brook Road. He was complaining about roosters, cows, several other things. So I want to give the man a little biology lesson. Happy, healthy hens. You don't need a rooster to have one of these. However, should one desire grandma's chicken on Sunday afternoon, no chicken dinner. You can't have it both ways. And he left out the pig. Who wants breakfast without bacon or sausage? Now, the next thing he talked about, or not in order, he talked about conservation plans. And I'm sure Mr. Harvey can correct me, but to my knowledge, the county has nobody that can write a conservation plan, nobody to enforce a conservation plan, and a farmer will only have a conservation plan if we go through the NRCS or DCR. And I'm not going to tell you whether I've done either of those two. So you don't know whether a farmer's got a plan or not. Third, he said that no $750,000 home should have a 200 or 20 cows next to him. Well, I got news for him. That farm next to him might be worth $3 million with $1 million worth of equipment and $500,000 worth of hay, feed, and cattle. And because he didn't mention land use taxation, I've got news for him. News flash. That $750,000 McMansion is paying more in real estate taxes than that farm's paying because of the way land use works. Now, in 1776, Virginia had 7 people in Philadelphia. You've heard of some of them. Thomas Jefferson, Richard Henry Lee, Francis Lightfoot Lee, Thomas Nelson Jr., Benjamin Harrison V, Braxton Carter, and George Wythe. 6 of the 7 were farmers. What this county needs is more $750,000 McMansions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone want to compete with that? Anybody next? No. Go ahead.
My name's Christine Kraft, and I live at 25 Owens Street, and I'm in the Rock Hill District. As you know, Vulcan Quarry has for the time being withdrawn their request for expansion in Stafford. Board members, please lead Stafford out of its Stone Age. Now is the time to formulate a plan for how the quarry and accompanying reservoir will be transformed when in approximately a decade these lands are deeded back to the county. That plan should include the creation of a beautiful natural area, as well as a place where people can learn about the complex human history of Stafford. The Stafford County Planning Commission and Stafford citizens did an exemplary job of fact-finding in regards to Vulcan's requests. The board meetings included many testimonies from citizens about the negative impact of the quarry's current blast, noise, dust, and traffic, as well as the likely decrease of housing values if Vulcan is permitted to further expand. If in the future Vulcan again lobbies to expand, we will continue to fight against their requests. Nothing brings citizens together faster than potentially lowering their housing values and compromising the health of their families. To my knowledge, in my 30-plus years of living in Stafford, this is the first time that a request by Vulcan has been turned down. The Planning Commission's 4-2 vote is a sign that Stafford County is not only concerned about the quarterly profits of businesses, but also county officials are concerned about the quality of the life of its citizens. 3 recent actions by the Board of Supervisors also witnesses to their commitment to the quality of life. Number 1, the creation of the Crow's Nest Natural Area Preserve. Number 2, the creation of the Stafford Civil War Park. Number 3, the realization by board members that traffic studies are a basic necessity when the board is considering major development, as in the case of downtown Stafford. In harmony with these recent actions, the Board of Supervisors has a responsibility to the citizens of Stafford to plan now to transform the quarry into the gemstone of Stafford. Please use this privilege to create a place of beauty and meaning, as well as lasting worthwhile value. I look forward to hearing your plans. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to item number 18, which is the public hearings. So item 18 is consider amending and reordaining County Code 15.4, which is the maximum speed limits in residences on Van Horn Lane. For this, we're going to recognize Mr. Oziak for a brief presentation.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and members of the board. Alex Oziak, Transportation Program Manager, and here to present regarding the establishment of the Residence District on Van Horn. Staff has received multiple contacts from residents who live along Van Horn Lane concerned with the excessive speeding along. They also submitted petitions signed by over 40 residents requesting the establishment of the Residence District with additional fines for speeding. Staff conducted a traffic study along Van Horn Lane back in July, which showed a speeding issue does exist. And this data was also shared with VDOT's Traffic Engineering Department, who agreed that the speeding issue exists and that Van Horn meets the requirements for a residence district. This slide here kind of shows the criteria for establishing a residence district, and the traffic study showed that Van Horn did meet all that criteria. VDOT requires that the locality requesting the establishment of a residence district show that a speeding issue exists and that the increased fines have community support. Since the majority of Van Horn Lane is really not served by a formal HOA, residents expressed support through the signed petition, which represented more than 51% of the residences in the impacted area. This map here kind of shows the area of the impact area stretching from Rock Hill all the way out to just shy of Hillcrest. So in summary, if approved by the board this evening, Ordinance O21-38 will amend the County Code Section 15-4.1C, creating a residence district along Van Horn Lane and allowing for an additional $200 speeding fine for those infractions. VDOT will install signage beneath the existing speed limit signs informing motorists of the residence district and the additional fine. And this fine can only be suspended by the court if they order 20 hours of community service. And with that, are there any questions?
Any questions? No? All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. Does anyone care to address the board on this item? Seeing no one rushing the podium, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. Has anybody thought of a question to ask in the meantime? Nope. All right. This is in my district, so I will make a motion to approve. Oh, thank you. Any further discussion? No, I just want to thank staff. I know this is really important to those constituents out there, as is constant radar and traffic enforcement, wink, wink, to the sheriff's office over there. So don't forget about Van Horn. I think this is a step in the right direction. With no further discussion, please cast your votes. Tally the votes. Motion carries 6-0 with 1 absent. Moving on to item number 20. Planning and zoning consider a request for a conditional use permit to allow a comprehensive sign plan in the M1 Light Industrial District in Hartwood. And this, we're recognizing Mr. Jeff Harvey.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, board members. As the chairman mentioned, this is a conditional use permit application for a comprehensive sign package. May I have the computer, please? The request is for the CUP on parcel 3778. It's pursuant to Code Section 28123G, which is in our sign regulations of the county code, which allows an applicant to pursue a change in our requirements as far as sign size or sign height, pursuant to a conditional use permit, which would regulate all the signs on the property. The current subject property is zoned M1 Light Industrial, and it's part of an 81-acre property in the Hartwood District. Mr. Steve Green is here tonight for Roberts Road Investment LLC, and he's being represented tonight by the law firm with Janelle Cameron and Jessica Pfeiffer. Sorry, Jessica. This is the location map of the property. As you can see, it's on the north side of Centerport Parkway. The surrounding zoning is primarily M1 Light Industrial in use. The portion of the property abuts the regional airport. This is an old aerial view of the property. Currently, the site is being cleared for development, as well as the adjacent properties in this vicinity. This is the generalized development plan site layout, which shows the proposed location of 2 wall signs for the site, which are subject to the conditional use permit. They are located on this side of the building. This is a very large building. It will be roughly 14.5 acres in size. The front facade in which the 2 signs would be located on is 479 feet in length, and the side elevations are 1,020 feet in length. So the side elevation is about the size of a football field, plus the end zones. So the request, when we look at the signs, and I'll get to that in a little bit, the signs are definitely, even though it's exceeding the county standards, are relatively small compared to the size of the building. Our zoning ordinance allows up to 4 wall signs along the front facade of a building in the industrial zone, provided that no such sign should be exceeding 200 square feet. The remaining sides could have up to 2 wall signs per facade. The proposal is to have 2 signs on the front facade, 270 square feet and 297 square feet. So that equates to 479 square feet in total compared to what would be allowed in the code of up to 958 square feet. So the applicant's asking for fewer signs as well as less square footage in exchange for having larger individual signs. This is the diagram of the proposed building facades as well as the signs themselves. The sign on the left side in this location is 270 square feet, and it would be approximately 9 feet tall by 36 feet wide. The sign on the right side of the diagram is 297 square feet, 8 feet 3 inches tall, and 36 feet wide. Again, when you look at the total width of both signs at 66 feet compared to the 400 and some odd feet of the frontage, they are relatively small in size. Staff believes that the signage would not be out of scale with the building due to the large size of the building and the limited size of the signs. The property is in the middle of an industrial area. In fact, as you may have noticed on that generalized development plan, the front facade of this building will be facing a vacant industrial property, which will likely build out as another industrial use, so those signs will be facing another industrial building. The signs address a number of our standards and our neighborhood design standards, such as being the fact that they will be backlit and they will not have any obtrusive lighting spilling onto adjacent properties. The corporate branding would fit into the scale and design of the building, and the signs are not proposed to be electronic message signs. They'd be static signs. The proposed conditions require that the signs be in the general location as shown on a generalized development plan and be consistent with the designs and dimensions of their application for the sign plan. The placement of the signs must be equal or smaller and no higher than on the facade than what was previously shown. And that would also go for if they ever had to change of business there, they could still change the signs out provided they meet these parameters. There would be, again, the limitation of no more than 2 wall signs on the front facade. Signage along the other facades would have to comply to the county code standards. There also would be a limitation on 1 monument sign on the property, and that would be the entrance sign that they showed on the generalized development plan at the access point for the project to Centerport Parkway. That any other signs on the property comply with the county code. That includes any directional signs or any on-site safety signs or any other incidental signs that they need. Staff finds a number of positives. We believe it's consistent with the recommendations of the comprehensive plan for industrial type development. The signs would be compatible with the existing planned industrial development. The wall sign's not out of scale with the warehouse building that's being proposed, and we believe conditions can mitigate potential impacts. The Plan Commission has recommended approval of the application on April 25th. The Plan Commission voted 5-1 to recommend approval, and staff is recommending approval as well. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Ms. Bomke?
Yes, could you help explain why Commissioner Bain voted against?
Supervisor Bomke, Commissioner Bain was concerned about the justification that was explained during the public hearing, justification for the request. Commissioner Bain felt that it was important to see that the justification would be more site-specific and give more details. And I can ask the applicant to address more details about their justification.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No? All right, thank you, Mr. Harvey. Does the applicant want to present?
Good evening, Chair and members of the board. My name is Jessica Pfeiffer with Walsh, Colucci, Lubelai, and Walsh, here on behalf of the applicant, Roberts Road Investments, LC. Here with me tonight is Steve Green. As you may remember, we were here with you last fall for the reclassification approval of this property to change it from A1 to M1. In accordance with the reclassification approvals, the applicant is in the process of developing the site, and this is the first building to be developed. The applicant is proposing this comprehensive sign plan to allow for signage over the square footage permitted by code. As mentioned, the comprehensive sign plan is for the 2 proposed wall signs and the monument sign. This slide shows the general development plan highlighting the locations of the monument sign and the 2 wall signs. This slide shows the proposed monument sign. The monument sign will be 9 feet in height and 88 square feet in face size. Here are the images of the wall signs that will be located on the front wall. These 2 signs are above code. One sign is 270 square feet, which is 70 square feet over code, and the other sign is 297 square feet, which is 97 square feet over code. The future user of the warehouse has several thousand locations and has a uniform signage at each location, which is what you see here. The proposed signage is their standard signage that is used for all their uses, like the one proposed for this property. As mentioned in the staff report, the signage is in scale with the size of the building. In addition, the applicant is proposing less total square feet of facade signage than the zoning ordinance allows. On the screen is the sign comparison charts comparing what is required by code and what is being provided, and showing areas that are not in compliance with the code and requiring this conditional use permit. As you can see and discuss, the signage square footage for the 2 wall signs are over the signage permitted by code. However, the proposed wall signage is in scale with the size of the building, and as Jeff said, it is facing not Centerport Parkway, but the other undeveloped, which will be industrial portion of the property, and is set back a good distance from Centerport Parkway. That concludes my presentation. With a positive staff report and recommendation for approval from the Planning Commission, we seek your favorable action tonight. And I did want to touch on the question that Supervisor Baumke had about the one commissioner that voted no. He was concerned that there needed to be a hardship in order for the conditional use permit to go forward, or there would be a precedent. This is not a variance. This is a conditional use permit. There does not have to be a hardship. We feel that there is a unique situation in the building, the distance it is from Centerport Parkway, how these wall signs are situated on the building, the fact that this is a very large building, the signs are in scale with the building, and that it is facing the rest of the industrial park. So there doesn't have to be a hardship, but there are conditions associated with this conditional use permit that the applicant is agreeable to.
Any questions? Thank you very much. I will go ahead and open the public hearing. Does anyone care to come and address the board? Seeing no one rushing the board, yeah, seeing nobody rushing down, and only staff is here and you. I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. Technically, the applicant does have a chance to rebuttal or present again, but I can't imagine that you'd want to do that. Any questions, Mr. Snellings? This is in your district. What would you like to do, sir?
Motion to approve R21-300.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further comments? Okay, hearing none, please cast your votes. Tally the votes. The motion carries 6-0 with 1 absent. All right, moving on. Item number 21, Planning and Zoning, amend the subdivision and zoning ordinances to modify requirements relating to family subdivisions in the A1 agricultural zoning district. Mr. Harvey.
Madam Chairman, back in March of this year, the Board of Supervisors took up its Healthy Growth Initiative and passed Ordinance 021-07, which changed the zoning density requirements in the A1 agricultural zoning district. During that deliberation of that action, the board heard commentary from a number of citizens concerned about the effects of changing A1 density on family subdivisions. Family subdivisions typically are fairly minor in nature as far as the number received per year. Typically, our staff receives about 4 applications a year. The majority of those applications are in the A1 zone, so there was consideration of changing the requirement to exempt family subdivisions from the A1 6-acre density requirement, so they could still subdivide at 3-acre lots, regardless of how many acres they have in their piece of property. So Ordinance 021-24 would do that, as well as amend the definition of family to include aunt, uncle, niece, and nephew for the purposes of family subdivision. The Planning Commission is recommending adoption of the ordinance, as well as staff. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? All right, thank you so much, sir. I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. I'm going to close the public hearing. I'm going to bring it back to the board for any additional questions or a motion.
I'll make a
Mr.
motion to approve.
Second.
All right, I'll give that one to Ms. Lamb as a second. Any further discussion?
I do have a comment.
Ms. Bomke.
All I would like to say is I really appreciate the people in my district that have been very, very patient as we've gone through these deliberations, sending it down to the Planning Commission, back up to the board, back to the Planning Commission, which is all part of our procedures and process based on state code. And I know people are waiting to make certain decisions on their family lots, and I just really appreciate your patience. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, go ahead and cast your votes. There's a motion to approve on the floor. Please tally the votes. That motion carries 6-0 with 1 absent. All right, rounding it out. For finish, Planning and Zoning, amend the zoning ordinance to amend the lighting standards for industrial uses. We recognize Mr. Harvey.
Madam Chairman, given the fact that you've had a long board meeting already today, I'm going to suspend the PowerPoint presentation and go to the heart of the matter.
I was really looking forward to that, Jeff.
The board is considering adoption ordinance 021-32, which would amend section 2887 of the zoning ordinance regarding lighting standards for industrial uses that do not have regular customers. Recently, we've had a number of industrial developments being proposed in the county, specifically ones that do not have customers that come to the business. They've noted that our lighting standards are in excess of what they see in other jurisdictions. Staff has done some research, and the Illumination Engineer Society Lighting Handbook, which is an international handbook, recommends a lighting standard on average of 1.5-foot candles for the parking lot of an industrial use. Our current ordinance is 5-foot candles for industrial use, which is typical of a commercial retail business. Staff and the Planning Commission are recommending the board adopt the ordinance 021-32 to amend the code to require the 1.5 average foot candles versus 5 for industrial uses.
Any questions for Mr. Harvey? Okay, thank you so much, sir. I will open up the public hearing for this item. Seeing no one move forward, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for a motion.
Motion for approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please cast your votes. Tally the votes. Uh-oh. Redo.
Hello.
We have been hacked. Okay, tally the votes. That motion carries 6-0 with 1 absent. Everybody agrees with the way that looks? Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Okay, that takes care of our public hearings for this evening, and due to the length of our afternoon agenda, we had some carryover items. Supervisor Lamb, will you please read us into closed session?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to authorize a closed meeting, whereas the board desires to hold a closed meeting for consultation with legal counsel pertaining to United States versus Stafford County, All Muslim Association of America versus Stafford County, and Allen et al. Versus Stafford County, where such consultation in open meeting would adversely affect the litigating posture of the board and discussion and consideration of the acquisition of an interest in real property for a recreation facility, which is a public purpose, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the board. And whereas pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A3 and A7, such discussions may occur in closed meeting. Now therefore be it resolved by the Stafford County Board of Supervisors on the 21st day of September 2021 that it be and hereby does authorize discussion of the above matters in closed meeting.
Okay, do I have a second? Second. All right, don't all jump at once. I have a motion and a second, and I have to read my fancy little disclosure like I normally do. I would like to disclose that I own property located across the street from 1508 Garrisonville Road, which is owned by the All Muslim Association of America and is subject to the active litigation. My property is among several parcels which could be impacted or affected by the use of 1508 Garrisonville Road as a cemetery. Discussions regarding the litigation and the 1508 Garrisonville Road property would have countywide impacts and would have no sole impact on my property. In accordance with Virginia Code Section 2.2312B1, I have no conflict of interest that would prevent me from participating fairly, objectively, and in the best interests of the public. I have also provided a disclosure to the clerk in writing. The clerk, if you will please record my disclosure in the record today and at any future board meetings where the board discusses or considers this matter. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please cast your votes. Uh-oh. We'll have to do a voice vote. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And I'll just note for the record that Supervisor Allen is absent. That motion carries 6-0 with one absent, and we are now in closed session. We can do it out here if you want, guys. Okay.
Madam Chairman, I'd like...
Now go.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to certify the actions of Stafford County Board of Supervisors in a closed meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Do I have any discussion? Seeing none, go ahead and cast your votes. Or no, it's a roll call because the clickers are broken. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion any abstentions? That motion carries 6-0 with one absent. Supervisor Shelton.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for Resolution R21-329, which is authorizing the county administrator and the county attorney to execute any and all documents necessary to settle and resolve the All Muslim Association of America Incorporated versus Stafford County, Virginia, and budgeting and appropriating settlement funds.
Do I have a second? Second. Any comments? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and do a voice vote. Supervisor Cohen?
Aye.
Supervisor Shelton?
Aye.
Supervisor Baumke?
No.
Supervisor Dudenhofer? Aye. Supervisor Snellings?
Yes.
And the Supervisor Vanuch votes no. That motion carries 4-2 with one absent. And that concludes our meeting. Thank you.